Hello and welcome back to Lorehammer, a podcast where I like to talk to my friends about Warhammer. We talk about Space Marines, we talk about orcs, and sometimes we even talk about love. Can love bloom in Florida K? In this episode, we'll find out. Joining me, we got Christian.
Hey, I am now Duke Severus XIV. Thank you very much.
Oh, the 14th, you say. Very nice, very nice. Succession has happened. And we also got, once again, out of the basement. What does it feel like to feel the sun on your skin, Jordan?
I'm actually still in the basement. I'm in the basement right now.
It's also nighttime, so there's no sun.
I never leave this
okay,
basement.
Well, way to break the... Okay, that's nice. This is a episode about the Severan Dominate, the final part 3. We've been on quite the journey here. Never before did I think we could get so much content out of one little faction that I've never heard of, but here we are nonetheless. The other fun thing about this episode is this is technically the 200th episode of Lorehammer. Isn't that quite something?
And the fourth guest joined the show.
Yeah, fuck. My setup's not ideal, I'm going to be quite honest. But that's just the way it goes for the next hot minute, but we'll carry on like nothing happened. Join the Discord, I guess, if you want to give me flack for the way we all sound. You know, we're working on it. It's unfortunate that we had to change studios a couple times, but I think we're almost got it dialed into how we need it. So join the Discord, shoot us a message. We're always having fun interacting with people. We also do events on there. Like right now we're running the Gangs versus Arbites Warfare. We're just about to start actually battling factions off against each other, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And to help us improve our audio quality and maybe our studio spaces, if you join the Patreon and help support the show through the Imperial Tithe, it's greatly appreciated. You can maybe fund rebuilding something like the studio we had in the past. Also, some benefits of joining the Patreon is you get an ad-free version for only $2.50. Is that a month? A week? A day?
A month.
Yeah, that's a month.
A year. $2.50 a month. And then for video versions of the show, you can get it for $5. So really cheap for a production. And yeah, for the number of hours we're putting into this, it would be really appreciated to help get something back into the show.
Yeah, and we're doing like twice a week recording, sometimes even 3. Like this episode, we've done like 3 episodes. So definitely tons of Lorehammer content being pumped out. And, every episode, the quality gets a little better as we get one more dollar to buy a new microphone again, or to buy something else, or just whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you can also join the live stream on Patreon as well. That's another benefit. You can join and talk on the live stream. We have a live chat room during the show, so you guys can come and give your 2 cents, but no heresy, please.
Yeah, it always makes me nervous doing the call-in guest. Who's going to be the first one to truly get me canceled? I've tried to get myself canceled. I've said some ridiculous shit, but who can really get it happening? That could be you. Join the live stream.
Absolutely. Come in the live stream, become a guest. We do guest call-ins at the end of the show, and those are always fun.
Yeah, cool. So today we're finishing off the Severan Dominate, a fledgling empire. The first time we talked about them, we kind of talked about kind of the history and the overview. The second episode, we talked a lot about like the logistics, like what does the succession of planets look like, and what are the supply lanes like, and how do they actually feed their population, all that kind of stuff. And in this episode, we're going to finish off with kind of the final detail of all the planets that are actually in this system. There's quite a few different planets here. It's settled, or it's not settled. It's set in the Spinward Front. So we'll start going through our notes, and we're going to learn a lot. Spinward, it's however really you want to say it.
All pronunciation is subjective.
Yeah, I got that weird Canadian accent, so it don't matter how I read it.
I don't think that's a Canadian accent, but okay.
What would you know about it, Jordan?
I don't know anything about Canadian accents. I'm hardly one myself.
Mm-hmm. I hear actually in the Canadian law, we're all immigrants, even if you're born there. So I don't know how that fucking works. But That's Canada for you, a fucking wanky janky place. Let's talk about other cool places. The Spinward Front. The Spinward Front is a stark and tumultuous frontier at the edge of the galaxy, where the very fabric of humanity reach stretches thin. It's a region once thought to be barren, far from the thriving central worlds of the Imperium. Yet this assumption quickly proved to be erroneous. While the stars here may be distant, they are far from empty. In fact, the area under the control of the Severan Dominate boasts an unusually high number of inhabitable worlds. Though these worlds are rarely ideal for human colonization, they hold the potential to support self-sustaining colonies, a crucial advantage in such a remote and contested sector. These planets, often harsh and unforgiving, provide a lifeline to the Severan Dominate's fragile empire, allowing them to maintain a tenuous hold on the power amidst the chaos of war and diplomacy. The Severan Dominate claim to the Spinward Front is not without its challenges. Many of these worlds, while capable of sustaining life, are inhospitable, requiring significant effort and resources to make them viable. Planets like Kulth, known for its harsh mining operations, provide vital resources for the Severan war effort. Despite the grueling conditions, the planet's importance to the Dominate cannot be overstated. Its deep mines extract essential minerals used in weaponry and armor, supporting the military machines that fend off both Imperial and Orc incursions. The laborers on Kulth toil under oppressive conditions, but they are the backbone of the Dominate's economic power, making the planet one of its most strategically significant worlds. Kokyotos, yet another key world in the Spinward. And here's the problem too. I've spelt this different a couple times too.
Yeah, it's literally
so even in my
in the notes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that really puts a hoop in what I'm talking about. But this place serves as the political and ideological stronghold for the Severan Dominate. Known for its ancient and deeply entrenched religious traditions, Kokyotos has long been centered for the resistance of the Imperium to the Imperium. The planet's leaders fiercely guard their independence, using their influence to rally other worlds within the Dominate to cause the succession. Its cities are hubs of rebellion and dissent, where the successionist cause finds fertile ground among the people. Despite being a world of culture and spiritual significance, Kokyotos is no stranger to the harsh realities of war. The planet's military defenses are formidable, and it stands as a proud bastion against the Imperial's attempts to reclaim the Spinward Front. Ohmsworld, a fortress planet on the edge of the Severan Dominate, presents a different kind of challenge. Once a bastion of military strength, it is now on the brink of collapse, besieged by external forces and internal instability. The world's fortifications, once seen as impenetrable defense, have slowly eroded over time due to the constant pressure from Imperial forces. Despite these hardships, Ohmsworld remains a symbol of resilience for the Severan Dominant. Its defenders continue to fight tooth and nail to maintain control, knowing that losing this crucial world could open the floodgates for Imperial dominance across the entire region. The outcome of the battle for Ohmsworld may well determine the future for the Dominate's influence in the Spinward Front. Overall, the planets in the spin... What are we going with? Which one should we go with? Spinward, Spinward? We should just do a quick Google check. What does the chat think it should be?
I say we take
overall
a vote.
I say we just change the pronunciation every other time you say it. Keep people on their toes.
The Windward Front are a microcosm of the Severan Dominate itself, harsh and resourceful in a constant struggle for survival. Each world presents its own set of challenges, but together they form a foundation for the Dominate's empire. A balance between diplomacy, war, and survival is delicate, and the outcome of the ongoing conflict in this far-flung region will have lasting repercussions, not just for the Severan Dominate, but for the entire sector. Whether through the exploitation of the harsh worlds like Kulth, the ideological battles on Kokyotos, or whatever we're going with, or the desperate fight for the survival on Ohmsworld, the Spinward Front remains a volatile and critical theater in the galaxy's ongoing saga. Yeah, so we've mentioned this on the previous episodes. If you haven't listened, what makes this whole kind of Severan Dominate interesting is it was made to play role-playing games in. So it came up with a bunch of different locations and planets, and then it decided to flesh out these planets. And we got different climates that we know about. We know the culture, a little bit about the history, and they really developed a lot of these worlds, so you can then drop your characters into them and have a baseline for what this kind of interactions are going to be like. And we can already kind of see some of these plans starting to develop, whether they're political strongholds or their mining operations or whatever they may be. But yeah, today's episode, we're just going to be kind of reading through every planet in this fledgling empire and teaching you a little bit about space and whatnot.
Yeah, our physics degrees in deep space planet. What do you call it? Planogeo.
Planophysics. Yeah.
Planophysics.
Yeah, planophysics.
It's a new field. We're just making it up as we go.
Okay, so hold on a second. Help me with my like cosmic geography here. The Spinward Front. How much of the Severan does the Severan Dominate like control the entire front, or is this just does this with the Empire here? Where are we here?
Yeah, so it's contested. You know, we have the Imperium in it. We have the Severan Dominate. We also have the Orcs in it. And then the other main faction that kind of pop up, we have the Dark Eldar. And I don't think they have any homeworlds, but it just seems like maybe their pirate ships are always in the area, or they have a very active webway portal from Cormorant that they seem to, constantly coming in and using. But those are kind of the main factions. We also get a small splattering of chaos, but from the Thousand Suns type warband. It's like an offshoot or whatever. But once again, they don't have like a stronghold. They're more just dipping their toes into the conflict and relishing in all the plots and the schemes that happen here.
Yeah, they're not necessarily taking and holding worlds. It's more like you said, Mark. Stuff gets contested. There's like an incursion, and then maybe they'll like disappear. Although the orcs are probably taking and holding planets, or at least parts of planets, right? So planets are big places, if anyone's noticed. So you can have more than one species on it at a time.
Yeah. I want to be the first one to explore them all.
Shut up. All right, moving on.
I like that I can make Star Wars quotes, even though I'm not a Star Wars guy. But it's like I feel like I'm a part of your guys' clique now. Like, yeah, we're friends. Like, one of the Star Wars. Yo, one of my most embarrassing. One of my most embarrassing podcast appearances was on your show. Actually, I had to bail halfway through, and I just fucking bounced, and I felt so guilty. So just know I feel bad about that, but
I remember that.
Here we are nonetheless.
We will never forget it. maybe Jordan and I will just dip right about here. All right, see you guys.
All right. Yeah, that's just why we have the call-in sections. All right, we're calling on you, Grimaldi. Get up in here. Yeah.
All right. Okay, the next planet up, Kuya Valley. Kuya Valley is a grim, enigmatic world dominated by colossal, temperate rainforests, where towering trees rise more than 100 meters in diameter and stretch a kilometer into the sky, casting the forest floor in perpetual shadow. These massive ancient trees form the foundation of two distinct human populations, one living high in the arboreal canopy and the other in the deep, dark caves beneath the roots. The arboreal communities have adapted to life suspended among the trees, cultivating unique ecosystems that thrive in the sheltered environment, while the subterranean dwellers, living in constant darkness, survive on fungal growths and the occasional subterranean creature. The planet's harsh, predator-filled wilderness is home to terrifying drakons, giant territorial reptilian predators capable of decimating entire populations. Despite the world's brutal conditions, Kuya Valley has long sustained human life, and it now stands as a critical point of contention in the ongoing war for survival under the Severan Dominate's banner, as it faces both orc invaders and the dangers of its own monstrous wildlife. That's a really cool planet. There's I have to just say it just because we're in the middle of talking Star Wars anyways, but
I was going to say.
It just reminds me of
Lay it on me, I'm one of the boys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Having like the different strata of like the forests where people are living. And a little bit of Morrowind dabbled in there with like dark elves living underground.
Yeah, I feel like this planet, I want to send some of my Astrocrota Marines there, hunt some of those Drakons instead of hunting Crotalids. You know, maybe some Salamanders go there for some hunting parties too, see what kind of cool trophies they can get from these Drakons.
Really doubling down on the lizard theme, eh?
Yeah, you know, you got to get all the pelts, as many pelts as possible. Green ones, red ones, blue ones, all the pelts.
A little salamander, like real life salamander size pelts just like hanging on there.
All right, so on to the climate of Cluyaville. Cluyaville, is that how you pronounce it? Or are we doing where everyone pronounces it their own way?
Kuya
Yeah,
Valley?
definitely that one. Yeah.
Okay, Kuyaville. The surface of Kuyaville is a land of shadows and towering giants, where colossal rainforests dominate the landscape. Trees, their trunks, more than 100 meters in diameter, stretch up into the heavens, reaching heights over a kilometer. The sheer mass of these ancient behemoths creates a canopy that blots out the sun, casting the world below into perpetual twilight. Those that reside in the sky above live according to the normal rhythm of the day and night, while those beneath the towering boughs exist in an eternal gloom, never knowing the light of the sun. Kuyaville's climate shifts with the seasons, but the massive trees shield the surface from the worst of it. The boles of these colossal plants protect the ground from the relentless winds of fall, and in the heat of summer, they offer a rare refuge from the unrelenting sun. Despite the occasional season change, the world remains a harsh, unyielding place where survival is a daily struggle against nature's savage unpredictability. These trees themselves are steadfast, but it is the creatures of Kuyaville that define its deadly character. The planet's true terror comes in the form of the Drakons, fearsome apex predators whose very presence warps the balance of life. These monstrous flying reptiles grow to staggering size, with some mature specimens boasting wingspans in excess of 250 meters. The Drakon's life cycle is brutal, beginning with small, ravenous hatchlings that are unleashed by their mothers from nests perched on the barren borders of the planet's arid mountains. Here in the desolate heights, thousands of these creatures emerge to tear through the rainforest, destroying all in their path, their frenzied hunting leaving only the strongest to survive.
250-meter wingspan. That just seems like, even for 40K, that they didn't dial it up to 11. They fucking cranked it to 20 on this one.
That is like a skyscraper, even a small skyscraper. No, even a big skyscraper. I'm like trying to think.
Yeah.
I need to
Like
Google 250-meter skyscraper.
You know what though? It might not, like, wingspan doesn't necessarily mean this overall size of the creature. Maybe it just has really big wings, like ridiculously oversized wings.
Really big wings, tiny little body.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, but still, man, like, you would have to have, like, it. Are the wings just like pencils sticking out and they're just so long and like, what the fuck? Nero in the chat says an Emperor Titan is at what, 150 meters, so way bigger than a Titan is tall. Yeah, I just wonder, how do you even feed these kind of things? Like, what are they eating? They must be just devouring each other, and like that's how they kind of, their food sources themselves, and they're constantly battling. Like, how else would you feed something so big on a planet?
Maybe they're vegetarians.
Oh, and they just eat the foliage. Yes.
Okay, so moving on. The aftermath of their birth is chaos. Entire regions of the forest are reduced to ruin as the hatchlings hunt and fight for their survival, devouring anything they can catch, including their own kind. Only a few survive this bloody purge, but those that do grow rapidly, consuming anything in their path. Explorators report that a young Drakon may gain over a meter in size each year, provided it can find enough prey to sustain its insatiable hunger. Their growth is a brutal process, with every year making them fiercer, more territorial, and more deadly. It's actually kind of like fish. A lot of fish actually don't stop growing. So
yeah, or they grow to the size of their their environment allows or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. Precisely.
Yeah.
By the time the Drakons reach maturity, they are near legendary in size and power. Their territoriality unmatched. Older Drakons are said to be centuries old, and they defend their domain with savage fury, attacking anything that dares to approach, whether it an isolated explorer, a small infantry squad, or a heavily armored tank. The Drakons will not hesitate to strike down any threat to their territory. Kuya-Vale's apex predators are a reminder of the brutal and unforgiving nature of the universe, where only the strongest survive, and the price of survival is measured in blood. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, what a crazy little spot. Like, you know, we joke about the Astrocode, the salamanders coming and taking trophies, but like they're not taking personal trophies. They're slapping like the wings on their Thunderhawk gunships. You know, they slap the wings on top and bolt them down. Like these fucking creatures are huge. They're out of control. With the appetite to match.
Percher says the Kroot would love that environment.
Yeah. So now you get a Kroot that eats one of these things, and then the Kroot grow to be 250 meter tall, and they're just like,
oh no, just their wings grow that size. They're still tiny little.
Oh yeah. Yes, like Aiden says, the opposite of a bee. Tiny little wings but big body, so the opposite of that. Grimaldus asks, is this a death world? Like, if you have to ask, yeah, maybe it's not deadly enough, but it seems pretty fucking deadly. The history and culture of the planet. The origins of humanity's presence on Kuya-Vale remain a dark enigma, shrouded in the mists of time. Imperial studies indicate that the planet was first inhabited by two distinct populations, one subterranean and the other arboreal, emerging at roughly the same time. But the reasons for their separation and subsequent isolation are lost to history. No surviving records before the humanity's arrival during the Great Crusade remain, leaving the true history of Kuya-Vale's first colonization obscured. The Adeptus Mechanicus may one day offer their theories, should they succeed in gathering biological samples, but until then, the origin of these populations remain a mystery. Humanity's arrival on Kuya-Vale dates back to the age of technology, long before the Great Crusade. The remnants of the Angevin Crusade, upon reaching the distant world in the 39th millennia, were stunned to discover evidence of human life thriving in this remote corner of the galaxy. Further exploration revealed two separate populations, each somehow managing to survive the planet's deadly predators. The ecclesiarchies, ever vigilant in spreading the Emperor's light, send missionaries to the world, determined to bring the glory to the Emperor to these isolated humans. The planet now teems with the Imperial Creed, but the distance from the Calaxis sector has limited any significant interaction with Terra and the wider Imperium. The arboreal population, however, remains largely disconnected from the outside world, living high within the towering trees that dominate Kuya-Vale's landscape. These isolated communities rarely descend to the planet's surface, choosing instead to spend their entire lives among the boughs of their giant groves. Dependent on the trees and various organisms living in the shadows, these humans have crafted unique microorganisms within the forest, cultivating the plants and fungi for sustenance, adapting to the harsh realities and their elevated existence. Beneath the shadow of the trees, the subterranean population lives in the planet's deep, forgotten caves. These caves, remnants of ancient water flows and decay root networks, are dark and oppressive. Here, humanity has learned to survive, relying on fungal growths and the scarce fauna that dwell in the shadows, all the while living in the constant fear of the planet's Drakons, massive yet territorial predators that strike without warning. Yet the darkness offers some safety from these apex creatures, as the subterranean dwellers hide from their hunger and savagery in the depths of the earth. With the rise of the Severan Dominate, both populations of Kuya-Vale have been drawn into a border conflict. The successionists have recruited heavily from both the arboreal and subterranean communities. using these forces to defend their world from the constant threat and the orc invasion. The Xenos intend on taming the deadly Dracons to use as instruments of war have met with some early success, even managing to ride one of the beasts as aerial transport. As the Battle of Kurivale intensifies, the planet becomes a battleground not only for survival against the relentless Dracons, but also for the fate of humanity itself. The world may be on the brink of chaos, but its people, ever defiant, stand ready to face the storms of war. Yeah, I just kind of wonder if, these humans have been here for so long. I wonder how different the two populations are. If, like, the cave dwellers are, they have giant pupils, all of them, to let as much light in, and maybe that's really the only different. And maybe the tree climbers ones have just slightly different spacing of their fingers, or longer fingers, able to grab more branches, or like just the minorest of little tweaks to make them just slightly different.
Yeah, I can picture the cave dwellers also being pretty pallid. And like,
sure.
Yeah, who knows? I wish they had a more description. I also wonder like how advanced their technology is, especially the ones living above ground. Like, it looks like they're just subsistence living, so they probably have pretty like hunter-gatherer level technology, not necessarily like designing ships or modern kind of weapons. So
yeah, and even the fact that they try to like tame these Dracons and ride them kind of could imply that they don't have their own aircraft to speak of, potentially.
and
but maybe even that's like a technology. Yeah, maybe that's just a technology they didn't want to develop, because like you don't want to be flying around in that environment. Like, the population just chosen two distinct locations, each one kind of specific to protect them from these predators, whether you hide underground or you kind of hide in the trees where their massive wingspans can't fly and navigate through,
Yeah.
You also wonder if there's like a sort of class warfare between the tree dwellers and the cave dwellers. Like, is there that dynamic going on between them?
Oh yeah, there's nowhere there's not slurs being slung back and forth between the branches and the caves. No way. If I know humans, and I do, I've met a couple.
Purge Seraph says, seems like a Kajui planet. How do you say that? Kaju.
I think that's from like Pacific Rim.
Yeah, it's a general like genre of Japanese giant monsters like Godzilla and all of them.
Okay, gotcha.
But they call them in Pacific Rim. I was gonna say orcs, man. Orcs are taming those dragons too, which is totally within orc how orcs operate.
Yeah, that would be some cool conversion. Somebody needs to buy the Tyrannid Hierodon, the giant gargoyle type dragon creature from Forge World, and convert that all orcified up. Maybe you add some slight tweaks to make it less Tyrannidy, but you can make some cool models.
Even that guy's too small. You need to go bigger.
Yeah, just a baby.
Yeah. All right, next planet, Fourth Eden. Fourth Eden is a vital agri-world and is the lifeblood of the Severan Dominate's food supply. Its vast plains and fertile fields feeding the war machine of the secessionists. The world's tithes, harvested in endless toil from the backbone of the secessionist strategic reserves, without them, the rebellion would starve. Should the Duke's grip on this planet falter, a cascade of worlds would follow, their supply lines severed and their people left to wither. The agricultural bounty of Fourth Eden is not just a resource. It is a symbol of survival, a testament to the determination of the Severan Dominate. Its control is everything, and the secessionists will burn the stars before they surrender it. Yeah, food is obviously very important to any civilization or rebellion or war machine. In the words of Napoleon, the army marches on its stomach. Climate. Fourth Eden's climate is a subtle yet unyielding force, a near-perfect synthesis of perpetual growth. The world's orbit, almost perfectly circular, and its minimal axial tilt creates an unrelenting stability, ensuring the land is forever in the grip of an endless growing season. The native humans and planets alike have long since learned to exploit this blessing, their lives defined by the eternal harvest. Surface temperature remains comfortably temperate, with daily rainfall nourishing the land, while the threat of severe storms remains a rare, fleeting nightmare. Only twice in recorded history has a planet seen truly catastrophic weather, both times narrowly sparing the heart of the world, its vast plains and steady fields. So this is like borderline a paradise world if it probably didn't have like slave labor levels of agriculture going on. But
And massive fucking dragons flying around. Yeah.
no, this
It's
is a new
almost it's almost like Panama, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll just go back there, and next time I'm gonna look for some cool dragons in the jungles behind my house. Maybe I'll find one.
For most, the weather is a serene constant, a spring-like rhythm that shapes the very pulse of the planet. The extremes are few, with the poles and elevated regions experiencing the cold bite of winter while the equatorial zones bask under the burning sun. Yet even in these harsher climes, the land yields its bounty, providing sustenance to the hardy souls who tend its soil. What makes Fourth Eden's land so exceptional is not the seasonal variation, but the inherent ease with which crops grow, and how swiftly the natives adapt to whatever challenges arise. Though the world's flora and fauna are largely docile, it is the imported pests, creatures brought by humanity, that threaten the delicate balance. These invaders disrupt the crops with their ravenous hunger, a dark reminder that even in paradise, humanity's mistakes can bear grave consequences. There are whispers among most radical agents of the Adeptus Mechanicus that Fourth Eden is no accident, that the planet was designed, constructed even, to be the ultimate agricultural world. Yet this theory remains but a faint whisper, devoid of solid evidence. The true nature of the Fourth Eden is a mystery, one that lingers like the scent of freshly harvested crops in the wind. Some say it was the Emperor's will to create such a world to feed its people, but the truth is shrouded in uncertainty. Still, for all its mysteries, Fourth Eden remains vital to the Severan Dominate. It is a bedrock upon which the rebellion stands, its fields feeding the hungry mouths of the secessionists, and its constant harvests ensuring that survival amidst the flames of war. Lose Fourth Eden and the rebellion would starve, its defiance withering like the crops under a harsh winter sun. Yeah, it's interesting. It could be potentially maybe what do you call the Eldar Maiden worlds? Something like that.
Crone World.
Yeah, like maybe it was engineered by the Eldar to be perfect, and then when it got invaded, they wiped out whatever Eldar colonists were there and just turned it into their own giant farm.
Yeah.
Purge in the chat says it kind of reminds me of Pandora from the Avatar movies. Yeah, I could see that actually.
I picture more of like vast open prairies, like grain as far as you can see. Really? Yeah.
Okay. Maybe. Okay. Anyways, so the history and culture. He might have been referring to the previous planet on that.
Yeah, I was still too. I mentioned the dragons on this planet too because I saw it in my mind. But we jumped planets to Fourth Eden, and then I was toning out Christian as I'm often one to do too. So
Yeah. Okay. So the history and culture of Fourth Eden. Fourth Eden was first discovered by Imperial forces during the final bloody days of the Angevin Crusade. By then, the crusade had reached its zenith, and High Command, battered and exhausted, was more focused on other priorities. Though the Calixus sector had been secured, expansion had begun to lose its urgency, leaving Fourth Eden on the fringes of Imperial attention. The planet seemed to offer promise, but its discovery came too late to warrant a full force of Imperial commitment. Instead, the Imperium dispatched only a token effort to colonize the world. The system lay far from the more established worlds, cut off from vital warp routes and the heart of the Imperium. High Command hesitated to commit resources, but Fourth Eden's allure was undeniable. A jewel too precious to ignore. Exploratory reports confirmed that, with minimal effort, a small group of colonists could establish a thriving world, and so it was. Less than 1 million Imperial citizens were settled upon the land, and in less than a century, the world blossomed. Communities sprouted, trading hubs were established, and Fourth Eden quickly became a cornerstone of Imperial expansion. This early success was not without consequences. Fourth Eden's bounty of food and resources became a lifeline for nearby worlds struggling to survive. It fueled the rise of the Severan Dominate, supplying the secessionists with the manpower and sustenance needed to challenge the Imperium. Yet, in a brutal twist of pragmatism, Duke Severus XIII, though dependent on Fortheden's wealth, was willing to barter its very soul for power. In a cold bargain with the Children of Thorns, Cabal Severus ceded the entire southern hemisphere of Fortheden to the Drukhari. In return, he secured the military might he required to consolidate his rule. Communications with much of the population were cut off, isolated by a war effort that justified the suffering. Over time, the southern hemisphere became a barren wasteland, stripped of all human life, now tended only by servitors in a grotesque parody of agriculture. But the Children of Thorns did not stop there. Recent reports suggest their assaults have begun to push further north, sparking rumors that Severus's desperation is deeper than anyone dared imagine. Or perhaps the price he paid for power is starting to unravel.
Yeah, interesting. So basically that bargain that Severin made with many kind of planets or many people with the Children of the Thorns, the Cabal of the Dark Eldar there, made kind of another underground pact with them. And yeah, you can take some of this planet by the sounds of it and do what you want with the population. And then slowly things just start to go to shit. And then they start taking more and more and pushing harder and taking more than they ever wanted or more than they ever kind of agreed to.
Yeah, so like this planet could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you take out that food source, like, yeah, then everyone's kind of no good. But, you know, thank God we have corpse starch. I'll always say it every time, you know, as long as people are dying, we can keep eating. Everybody in the war machine is technically another meal on your table.
Do you run a funeral home by any chance, Mark?
No, I'm not allowed around corpses anymore. Not after what I did with Eric's corpse.
Isn't it in your belly?
Yeah, you know, yeah, for legal purposes, yeah. I did one time actually work in a funeral home as an electrician, and their furnace went out, so I had to go inside and do some electrical wiring and stuff. And man, was it ever dusty. And I just like to pretend it was dust and not people dust, but we all know what it really was.
Yeah, you were breathing that people dust for sure.
For fucking sure, man. Yeah, my tools had like a thin layer of people dust on them. It was fucked.
That's horrifying, actually.
Yeah, man.
How did it taste?
Delicious, man.
You got some in your mouth. I know you did.
Yeah, it didn't even need the chicken flavored packaging.
Aiden says Mark's discount cremations.
You only have to cremate half the body because I'll eat the other half.
He's worried about global warming, okay?
All right. Yeah, that's a fun planet. Very key, very instrumental, it seems. We'll jump to the next planet now, and this one is Carasilia. The Carasilia system is a labyrinth of gas giants, their dense atmosphere hiding the precious resources coveted by the Adeptus Mechanicus for the creation of warp drives. Though these resources were cataloged centuries ago, they remain largely untapped, as the system's remote location, far from the Forge World, and the ever-encroaching war have made proper exploitation all but impossible. Settled 5 centuries ago by a wave of imperial colonists, the system was meant to supply the manpower necessary for the future extraction of resources. Yet the grand plan faltered. While the population grew, it did so in painful isolation. The world's people forgotten, left to endure the harsh realities of their desolate existence. When Severan XIII sought to fuel his rebellion, it was not hard to ignite the fires of defiance in Carasilia. The system's population, starved for the purpose and purposely distanced from imperial authority, proved fertile ground for the Severan Dominate recruitment. Not a single world in the Carcilia system is untouched by war. Over 30 separate assaults from the Imperium have failed to dislodge Severus's hold, and the orcs, relentless in their savagery, have thrown equal numbers of their own campaigns against the system. The battles are unholy, with both sides fighting not for victory, but for survival. The Astra Militarum have committed countless regiments to the cursed system, but each gain comes at a cost far greater losses everywhere else. One satellite may fall into the Imperial hands only for another to slip away in the same breath. The surface of the system's moon and planetoids is a testament to the endless conflict. Cratered, corpse-strewn wastelands, poisoned by the very gases unleashed by the Severus's forces, and scoured lifeless by the deadly weapons of the Imperium. This war is not conventional struggle, but a brutal island-hopping campaign, with each world a contested prize, fought for in bitter cycles. It is rare for any satellite to remain in one faction's hands for more than a few months before the enemy sweeps it all away. Yet the war rages on. The Carcilia system's strategic position alongside the Calexis Scarius warp conduit makes it too vital for either side to relinquish, and so it endures in the bloody, endless conflict and struggle. Jumping way back up to the top there, this whole planet was really settled just for the point of warp drive creation. So there's precious resources. I'm going to look into what that really means. Like what kind of resources do you really need to build a warp drive? Is it just metals, like a very specific containment metal? Have you heard anything about such things?
No, my knowledge of warp drives is limited, but if it's a gas giant,
Damn it, Christian.
I imagine.
So you haven't studied planetary physics yet, or planophysics, or whatever I called it. you don't know warp drives.
In a fictional world, nonetheless.
Fuck. I bet you could tell me all about hyperdrives and how they work, but
there's only so much space in this brain, all right?
All right.
Are you looking it up, Mark, or do you want me to move on?
Yeah, you can move on, and if I find anything, we'll hop back to it.
All right. Kokyotos. Kokyotos stands as a frozen testament to the futility of war, a tragedy of epic proportions, where no victory can ever truly be claimed. Both the Imperium and the Severan Dominate have sacrificed countless lives on its brutal, frigid surface, locked in bitter conflict that will ultimately leave nothing but scarred ice and hollow graves, its impact fading beyond the planet's frozen boundaries. Since its secession, both sides have clung to the delusion that Kokyotos holds some crucial importance to the war effort. Though the belief is patently false, neither side dares to abandon it. Driven by stubborn pride and the weight of their initial misguided assessments, they continue to pour their forces into a battle that leads only to endless bloodshed. The escalation seems inevitable, each side desperate to uphold a view that grows even more untenable with each passing day, condemning more lives to a cause that will never alter the galaxy's balance. So this is really just a waste of life. It's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's actually pretty sad. I actually just listened to a documentary about World War II where there was I forget, I think it was just after the Normandy landings, and the Germans and the Allies kept fighting for like this little patch of land that neither side really had a strategic purpose for, but they only did it because the other side was doing it. So it's like, for some reason, the Germans think this is really important, so we're going to invest double the troops. And then the Germans are like, well, the Americans are investing double the troops. It must be important that for some reason we don't know, so we're going to invest extra. And people just like keep escalating. And yeah, at the end of the day, it like had no real strategic value. They just didn't want the other side to have it.
That's like very mimetic. It sounds like, you just copy the other because that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
especially enemies.
Yeah. A cool thing too is Kokyotos is one of the rivers of Hades, which kind of makes sense for like the frozen, desolate, kind of like life-sucking battlefield that this is. I was trying to look for a pattern in the names of the planets, but I'm not seeing one. It's kind of weird. They're like all over the map.
Fuzz says it's the Imperium's equivalent of flyover area, flyover country.
Yeah. Or state.
Probably, yeah.
But they'll also invest double the troops into it just because.
True, yeah.
All right. Climate. Kokyotos is a world of bitter, unrelenting cold, where the average daytime temperature barely creeps above freezing, and the nights plunge into even greater depths of frost. Harsh, ceaseless winds howl in its desolate surface, scouring the land. The planet's oceans, once thought to teem with life, now lie entombed beneath layers of endless ice and snow, an unbroken frozen expanse stretching to the horizon. You know what world this reminds me of, Jordan? Ha!
Oh, I was thinking Canada there for a second.
Also that.
It's been so, yeah.
I feel like there's a pattern occurring here. So
Yeah, wait a minute. What RPG book did I take this all from? Was this from a Star Wars or 40K fucking thing? What the fuck?
Ancient records speak of a thriving world, rich with indigenous life, from hardy plants to resilient animals that once endured the planet's extreme cold. Now these creatures are little more than whispers of the past, their sightings becoming rarer by the day. Some claim these species are succumbing to the increasing hostile environment, while others suggest that they have retreated into the depths, hidden away from the crushing cold and the madness of the ongoing war. For the Severan Dominate secession, Kokyotos' human population lived in relative seclusion, sheltered in fortified domes designed to protect them from the relentless weather. Inside these bastions, vast hydroponic gardens flourished, providing food for the inhabitants, a tenuous but sustainable way of life amid the unyielding cold.
Sir, that is like a kind of fascinating world or situation I would love to live in. Be like surrounded by cold, but you're like inside a nice little hearth and home.
It's very cozy.
Yeah, nice little greenhouse. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Just
think it would
tended to
kind
a
of
little hydroponics.
yeah, like it would just be cool to be in like the contrast, like where you have like you're surrounded by bitter cold and icy death, and then inside is like life and humid warmth.
Does it remind you of your mother's womb until you reach the realities of?
I was gonna say, but I didn't want to. Grimaldus asks biodome style.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I would guess it would be some sort of biodome.
But less madness.
Yeah. I could also picture too some of them like chiseling into the ice below, and like there could be a vast tunnel network of like ice catacombs essentially that could maintain heat, and even have parts of there that have trapped heat bubbles in it and maybe melted some of the ice and made like little rivers or ice lakes underneath and all that kind of cool stuff.
If the planet's geologically active, it would have geothermal energy they could tap into too. You could like burrow, if you could burrow deep enough, depending on like how close to the surface the warmth is. Something I've considered doing myself. Just digging a hole in my backyard to see if I can get some geothermal.
Yeah, no, we've talked about being bunker buddies many times before, but I didn't have a backyard big enough to dig a sea cannon and hide away from humanity, and so instead I went to Panama.
Fun fact: don't bury sea cans; they collapse. You have to like reinforce them. Not that I've tried, but others have.
I was getting very close to starting my sea.
Bang! Back to the drawing board of my bunker. Hey, Jordan. Jeez.
Exactly.
Right.
Sorry, Purge says in the comments, it's the flat Earth of 40K. Is it now? And Alden is, or sorry, not Alden, Aiden, but your new name is Alden. Freud, he says in the comments, Freud is having a field day with all of you. Thank you, sir. Let me go back to my mother's womb.
Harken back to the place of warmth and comfort that you once knew.
All right. But the war has destroyed most of these cities in its opening months, now that the survivors face a planet that no longer offers sanctuary. Struggling with scant resources, no shelter, and a brutal environment that consumes everything it touches. Unless something shifts the course of this conflict, it is certain that none of this local population will endure, no matter who prevails in the end. The war on Kokyotos is a slow death, inevitable and all-consuming. Yeah, it also reminds me of that Frostpunk game, if anyone's played that, where it's like the world is frozen over and you have to keep the warmth going in the middle of your town, and you kind of build outward and like have to fight against the cold. It's a really cool atmosphere. It's nice when you're in the basement of your house freezing to death in the Canadian winter.
That's where I am all the time. I never leave. Purge says he prefers Nietzsche over Freud. Personally, I totally agree with that. I think Freud is way overrated, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. Any of those big thinkers were way overrated. We're men of violence here. Strength always is the best idea.
Precisely. Okay, so the history and culture of the planet. So native legends tell of a time when Kokyotos was a temperate world, its climate once perfectly suited to human life. This ancient colonization predates the Great Crusade, a relic of the age of technology. Long before the Imperium's gaze returned to the world during the dying days of the Angevin Crusade. By the time the Imperium rediscovered Kokyotos, its once hospitable climate had changed drastically. The planet had fallen into the grip of an ice age, and the few surviving records from the first contact between explorers and the locals tell of a population eager to abandon the frozen wasteland for warmer climates. But the planet had a secret beneath its frozen surface, a vast reserve of promethium, the lifeblood of the Imperium's war machine. What began as a hope for escape turned into a grim fate. The local population soon pressed into service, tasked with mining the precious resources, a duty that would bind them to the icy world for centuries. When the War of Secession erupted, the Imperium targeted Kokyotos for its strategic value, believing the promethium would be essential for victory. The Severan Dominate fought back fiercely, desperate to retain control over this frozen world's dwindling resources. In the end, it was all for nothing. The promethium is nearly gone, and now both sides battle over a barren rock with nothing left to offer but death. What began as a fight for a vital asset has become a relentless, senseless struggle for a world that has nothing left to give.
Yeah, that's kind of cool how they set some of these up where it's like, after 10,000 years on a spot or however long some of these planets are, you've tapped all those resources and now there's nothing left, but you still got people there and you can't leave. None of these people are capable of leaving or allowed to leave potentially, or just have nowhere to go, really. So yeah, you just carry on and struggle in your frozen biodomes and life's good.
It costs too much to relocate the population. Just like when you have like war materials you ship overseas, you just kind of either trash it there or leave it there. For the end take.
Is that the winning technique?
I'm not saying it's a winning.
We're gonna go with.
Yeah, Fuzz says in the comment. Okay. Fuzz says in the comments, got to get that space oil. Yep, or for oil. Mm-hmm. Story as old as, well, I guess since the time we had oil.
we used to have whale oil back in the day that we fought over, but now we're sophisticated and we fight over poppy seeds. Opium. All right, the next planet on the list, we got Kulth. The war world of Kulth. Perfect. Yes. That's already off to a great start. This world is just about war. The war world of Kulth stands as a strategic keystone of the Spinward Front, occupying a pivotal position amidst the swirling chaos of the periphery. It straddles the precarious warp conduit, marking the last bastion of the Imperium before the route plunges into the lawless, uncharted depths of the wilderness space. Kulth's orbit once thrived with the activity of countless void docks, established to service the warp vessels passing through on their journeys to and from the precarious subsector. Yet, with the outbreak of war, these once bustling docks have fallen silent and cold, many now reduced to low-gravity, vacuum-haunted battlefields in their own right. The surface of Kulth was once a pastoral dream, with rolling hills and fertile plains ripe for exploitation. That's fun. That's how they describe it once again. Very Imperial. Like they see this beautiful spot and they're like, let's exploit it. We got to take everything on it. And they're mad at the Tyranids for such things. But, who's the real villains?
Who are the real Tyranids?
Mm-hmm. Duke Severus I envisioned a utopia here, a world where the nobility of the Kalexis sector could gather in grandeur. To this end, he constructed his sanguine palace on the glittering coast of the primary continent, a monumental structure of deep crimson marble. For a time, it seemed that Severus's dream might come to fruition. He invited military leaders and allies to Kulth, bestowing titles of nobility and establishing a feudal hierarchy with himself at the top. However, his ambitions would dash when Drasus, elevated to Lord Sector of Kalexis, took a swift action to strip Severus of his achievements and legacy. Drasus' forces descended on Kulth, and the planet was swiftly transformed into an administrative center of the newly formed periphery subsector. Severus, now relegated to the faded glory of his coastal palace, watched as the Imperium's bureaucracy machine sprawled across his beloved world. His line clung to the holdings, but their power was a distant echo. In the decades that followed, Kulth became a bustling shipping hub, with levies placed on the imperial commerce passing through the region. House Severus, despite their fall from grace, retained their palace. Their nobility stripped of power, but not entirely of wealth. Duke Severus XIII's heir to the long-forgotten dreams of the forebearer eventually crawled his way to the rank of Lord Subsector of the Periphery. His rise was brutal and unyielding, marked by the covert purge of Kulth's Adeptus presence. The remnants of House Severus reclaimed the palace as a symbol of remembrance, turning it into a court where the sycophants and assassins mingled in deadly dance of power. Beneath the feign of loyalty and the outward displays of nobility, the palace had become a hotbed of decadence and heresy. What is this word? I wonder. Epicurean. Epicurean. What does it mean?
Oh, don't make me go to a dictionary, man.
Don't worry,
I've heard it before.
Epicurean means a disciple or student of the Greek philosopher Epicurus.
It's also a lifestyle and a brand of kitchenware.
Oh, wow. Okay, wow. Well, this place, Zeno's assassins lurked in the shadows, ready to strike for a price. In the crumbling halls of the Sanguine Palace, a newer, darker chapter of Kulth's history was being written. Then came Wog Grimtooth, a storm of violence that first swept across the planet. Wow. The later I go on these episodes, the more like a retard I sound when trying to read. But, we'll fix that in post, but enjoy that on the live stream YouTube edition. You want to know what else I can do on the live stream that I can edit out? I can say whatever I want, and no one will know. In the crumbling halls, Before Kulth's grim fate became clear, it took many solar months before the forced scale of the Orcs' predations were realized on the planet. Even then, Duke Severus XIII and his stubborn pride believed that he could starve off the barbarous Xenos with the forces of his command, refusing to compromise his ambitions and seek aid from the Kalexis sector lord. His resolve, however, was shattered swiftly, and faced with no other option, he declared the Severan Dominate succession from the Imperium. Kulth was once a symbol of feudal nobility, was now a scorched, corpse-ridden wasteland. The once pristine continents were now splintered and divided into ever-shifting, blood-soaked territories, of whichever army had last committed the most resources to seize them. The Sanguine Palace still stands, its crimson marble a stark monument to the past, protected by the orbital strikes by void shield domes, an apparent gift from outcast factions of the cult Mechanicus. Surrounded by the most formidable defenses on Kulth, it remains unclaimed, though both the Imperium and the Orcs have come agonizingly close to breaching its outer precincts on numerous occasions. For 83 standard years, the Battle of Kulth had raged relentlessly, with each faction rising and falling as entire armies are ground into the dust. At times, one force has seemed on the brink of total victory, only to be upended by a counterattack from a third party. Currently, the Severan Dominate is confined to a small section of Kulth's primary continent, while the majority of the fighting is waged between the Imperium and the Orcs. How long this standoff might persist is unknowable, but the balance could shift at any moment. Kulth's battle zones have been become notorious for chewing through men and machines at terrifying rates, making the primary destination for newly raised Astra Militarum regiments. The Imperial forces on the world are commanded by the Lord General Ganzorkik, who personally leads them in a never-ending struggle. The Imperial High Command is entrenched in Fort Drasus, a formidable ring of bastions and fortresses near the planet's northern pole. Its name an insult to Severus XIII. This nigh impenetrable fortress is assaulted daily by the relentless orcs. For the guardsmen who survive longer than a few days, the grim reality is clear. Nothing on Kulth is permanent. The front lines shift constantly, entire positions lost as quickly as they are gained. Garrisons, troops are continually routed, sent to shore up the front wherever the battle is most intense. General Ganzorkik, known as the Old Steel and Blood, a name spoken with both fear and respect, his subordinates understand his ruthless dedication to the Emperor, knowing that his sense of duty includes sacrificing countless lives, his own men included. Should he deem it necessary, his reputation as a leader is fearsome, and he is known to revel in his grim moniker. A veteran of the 61st Maccabean Janissaries, Ganazork's rise through the ranks is storied. During the Achilles Crusade, he led his regiment through the Orpheus Salient, gaining a reputation for both tactical brilliance and brutal endurance. His wounds are numerous, but his resolve is unyielding. After near fatal injury, Ganazork, ascended to the Imperial General Staff, quickly proving his worth by commanding entire army groups with the same tenacity as shown on the front lines. Upon establishing the Spinward Front and the succession of the Severan Dominate, Ganazork was appointed Lord Marshal and tasked with an overwhelming responsibility of repelling the Orc invasion, suppressing rebellion, and restoring order to a region long plagued by lawlessness. Yet despite his effort, Ganazork's campaign had been hampered by what seemed like a lack of necessary resources. The situation on Kulth is dire, but military reinforcements remain insufficient. Some within the sector's highest ranks believe that his shortage is by design, that the Imperium wishes to see Severan Dominate and the Orcs' wogs of Grimtooth annihilate one another. Whether Ganazork is aware or complicit in such a plan remains a mystery. What is certain, should he ever learn the truth, no one could predict how fearsome Old Steel and Blood might react.
Pretty standard Imperial doctrine there. Just feed men into it.
Yeah. keep throwing them bodies at it. Yeah. Very, very classic for sure. It's kind of a crazy spot. Like, what are they even fighting for here? Like, it just seems like this was once a spot that was going to be cool, and then it pretty much got wrecked. And for most of its history now, it's just been a wreck.
Yep. And going back to the word Epicurean, in case anyone was wondering, Purge says in the comments, it is a person who has a luxurious taste or habit, especially in eating and drinking. So
not me. I'm not picky in what I eat.
I was gonna say I thought it was something close to that, but I didn't want to sound ignorant, so I didn't say anything.
Now you did, and now we all know you're ignorant, Jordan.
Yeah.
I guess it was never really that much of a surprise. But...
All right. Let's learn more about the Imperial forces on Kulth. Lord General Ganzork commands the largest and most formidable concentration of the Imperium's military might within the entire Calixa sector. Yet even with such overwhelming resources, they remain insufficient to deliver the final crushing blow that will secure the world for the Imperium. Current estimates place his forces at staggering 5 million troops, with approximately 2/3 deployed in the brutal frontline combat, and a remainder stationed in second-line reserves, units, or supporting functions.
I just had a quick question. Like, do you guys, off the top of your head, know how many militants are in the standing army of the Imperium? Just on this note, just so I have like sort of a grid. Is it like trillions or is it billions?
I don't think they ever give a number. They just always say like countless and innumerable and vast, and
Yeah.
which is a
sounds
good
like
thing.
That sounds like imperial propaganda, though. Like to just use those words instead of specific numbers.
40K is awful with
Yeah.
numbers.
But
Go
like
ahead,
the Imperium is made of a million worlds, so even
That's
that, like, if the army must have trillions of people. Like, yeah, when I read that number of 5 million people, it seemed small, but
yeah,
that's
that's
a
kind
lot
of what
of
I
soldiers.
thought. I thought maybe it wasn't like it sounded kind of standard. I will say, if anyone's ever read like Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, which is like it was sort of the one of the first space epics, and honestly, if anyone is interested, I think Warhammer takes a lot of inspiration from Foundations, but like the populations are in the trillions, and obviously in 40K, like the populations are in the trillions. But I'm like more curious about like what a typical standing army's population would be. If it's like Space Marines, they don't even need that many. Like you could just
yeah, like with the Imperium, there is really no such thing as standard. You like, even amongst Imperial Guard regiments, they can vary so drastically. Some might have only 100, while others might actually like be upwards of 1 million in their regiment. It's so varied.
So the population of the Imperium is estimated to be around 15 quadrillion. And could be as high as 1.5 quintillion. Now, hold on. That doesn't necessarily. So historically, people overestimate like a military size relative to its total population. It's usually pretty small. So but then the Imperium is also like a all-encompassing, like tyrannical government. So like, how do you even know what percentage are going to be like drafted into the military to some degree? And then
wouldn't it be like a high percentage?
Potentially, but like, even like, you'd have to look at numbers coming out of like North Korea, for example, and see how much of even their population, because I doubt it breaks more than like 15%.
And even that would be crazy high if they had that many.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, I don't know how to break down percentages when you're dealing with quadrillions, but
okay, if it's if they're in the quadrillions, like the population, then their army, in some capacity, maybe not necessarily frontline soldiers, but people in the military, has got to be in the trillions. Like, it's
I would imagine,
yeah. So, and that's what I was going to say next, is also like, what is your military? Like, most militaries are more logistics than they are frontline combat troops, right?
Especially highly technological military.
Yeah, you're looking at like 3 to 5, I want to say, or maybe as high as 10, at least in the American forces, which I could be wrong. Someone who's actually in the military can correct me on that. But like, for every one frontline soldier, there's, I think, anywhere between 5 to 10 support. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. Purge in the comments says, Foundation was great. Sadly, only modern people refer to Asimov. The only modern references to Asimov is iRobot. I agree. Foundations is just an excellent universe. But we won't get into that now because we're talking about 40K, okay?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna go back to the numbers thing.
Okay.
40K is also terrible. Just the numbers, like they'll name like a battlefield and it's like less numbers than we've actually fought in like World War II or World War I. And then like fighting over and you're like, what? None of the scaling makes sense. So with 40K, it's better to be fast and loose with the numbers and just imagine in your head that it's some vague amount.
Fair enough.
But the number of soldiers is only one part of the equation. Behind them lies an intricate and endless logistical machine, essential to keeping such a massive army in motion. Regiments are raised from every corner of the Calixa sector, each world offering its required tithe. To prevent any risk of disloyalty amidst the chaos, numerous regiments have been drawn from further afield, including the distant worlds of Cadia, Talarn, and Bostroia, spurred into action by the recent rise of the demon Day Phage, who was once mistakenly believed to be the reincarnation of Saint Drasus. These new regiments, though brought together for Kulth's war, were originally assigned to other missions, often drawn from the Segmentum Obscurus reserves or redirected from other theaters of war. Some are long-serving veterans with decades of experience. They are battle-hardened, yet grimly aware that they are not here for any promise of glory or settlement. The war on Kulth is set to be enduring, grinding conflict, stretching on for decades. Amongst these Imperial forces is a staggering array of military units, showcasing the full range of the Astra Militarum diversity. The main infantry regiments vary dramatically from small elite squads of heavily armored grenadiers to vast sweeping formations equipped with the most basic, mass-produced weapons. Their numbers are bolstered by artillery units armed with every conceivable weapon, ranging from mass mortars to colossal self-propelled super heavy artillery.
Man, it just seems like the more I read about this place, like every planet is this like never-ending just body pit of war where they're just throwing bodies at it. And it's so crazy. Like when this is a very different vibe than the other two episodes that we kind of talked about them, where it's like resources are always tight. There's never enough manpower. They're always shuffling people from place to place because there's never enough. And yeah, I guess you have to keep shuffling people around because they're just dying needlessly on every world, fighting over literally nothing at this point, except for survival itself.
Yeah. I mean, that's like pretty much the vibe of all of 40K, isn't it? Just endless battlefields and only war. That's
yeah,
the
but
tagline of
sometimes
the
at least
show.
there's like, yeah, no, but at least sometimes there's like something you're fighting over. Like this, it's just like, yeah, we have this battlefield and we like just tossing bodies at it. There's no reason. All the Promethium is gone and it's a frozen fucking wasteland. Or like this one, it's like we've wrecked this whole planet anyways, and like
They're just gonna keep fighting.
just keep
Yeah.
fighting. Like, yeah.
It's almost like they've forgotten what they're even fighting for. You know, they get so
Yeah.
deep into it that it's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like just habit now at this point to just keep sending people here to die. And it's like that. This is our culture. What a wonderful culture we've developed.
And I am very inclusive. So I welcome this culture.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
I was going to say something else too on the vagueness, like keeping things vague, but I forgot now. Never mind. Moving on. The tanks of the Astra Militarum are led by an indomitable Leman Russ, the dependable workhorse of the Imperial Armed Forces. Others command the formidable Baneblade, or one of its many variants, weapons of such massive power that they can tear apart orc gargants with ease, or obliterate hundreds of enemies in a single strike. Mechanized infantry move to battle in armored chimera personnel carriers, while some regiments favor mounted cavalry, charging forth on a variety of beasts. A select few serve as drop troopers, and Ganzoric is fortunate enough to have the elite Elysian regiments under his command. These airborne specialists are among the finest aerial and orbital assault forces within the entire Astra Militarum.
We've mentioned two cool regiments now. We mentioned the Macabarian Janissaries. I think I said that. They're pretty cool. Like, go Google a picture of them if you haven't seen them, but they got cool faceplates on them. And then we also have now mentioned these guys too. So it's interesting to see that there's different regiments at this place. Like, once again, this picture that I built up of what the Severan Dominate is, you know, I pictured those almost like Spartan, Greek-esque kind of highly advanced tech warriors almost. But they're still calling upon other Imperial Guard regiments, and they're stuck in this place too. Like, just imagine being one of these Elysian drop troopers fighting over this fucking planet, and you're like, my homeworld's across the galaxy. Why am I fighting on this dead world here? But yeah, like you said, Christian, that is just the Imperial way, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's obviously there's a very strong, like, thematic influence that 40K is intentionally doing with the whole thing of like the senselessness of war. Obviously, these guys being British, you know, World War I, like marking everyone's psyche with just like bloodshed for the sake of bloodshed, and that like fighting over a useless patch of earth, like thousands of bodies just fed into the meat grinder, right? So
You'll also have to remember, like, World War I was like trench warfare, and this was something very different than people had experienced and very traumatic. And it actually changed like a lot of the public opinion, because when the soldiers came home and sort of all the problems they had, the injuries, the diseases they contracted while in the trenches as well, it sort of changed because before war was seen as very glorious and
Romantic.
yeah, it's very
Napoleonic.
romanticized. But World War I sort of changed the perception of war to be a lot more, shall we say, grim and dark.
Yeah. Was it World War I or World War II that kind of really invented like gas, like toxic gas and stuff?
World War One.
Yeah. So even like that is just like something unfathomable, like where you're just like, oh, a cloud of fucking acid smoke. Great.
Acid smoke. That actually reminded Mark the thing I was going to say earlier about vagueness. So when you were saying like the Severan Dominate, like being kind of on the ropes, I think it's all on a question of scale. Same thing as like we were saying with like the sizes of militaries and fighting forces, where like, yes, the Severan Dominate is on the ropes, but they also do have, the resources of entire worlds at their disposal. So like,
entire systems, even like
exactly. It's a relative scale.
Yeah,
like they're nowhere near as endless resources as the Imperium, but they do have enough to throw soldiers into meat grinders. The other thing too, you were kind of confused there, is the Severan Dominant is fighting against the Imperium. These are the Imperial forces.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So like these other regiments are fighting against those like hoplite looking fellows.
Okay.
Purge says in the comments, Koth is needed to get a foothold into the rest of the Severan Dominant. And he also wanted to mention that there's still trench warfare going on in Ukraine as well currently. And that is true. And it's trench warfare is absolutely brutal. I would never want to be part of trench warfare.
What warfare would you like to be a part of, Jordy?
I would like to
drone
be
warfare.
No, I'd like to be in like a Space Marine suit and
completely protected from every hazard.
Yes.
Pussy.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I don't think you're cut out for a Space Marine. No offense by that, but yeah. No, I think you're either going to get drafted into a penal legion because you're a big bang, or
that is not what penal legion means, but we'll go with it. They're the greatest of us.
Aiden says Jordan likes the drones. I would prefer to just sit behind a computer screen and
no. You're fighting the drones. We all got to get that in our mind that soon we'll be fighting the drones. They're invading our homes, dragging our wives out.
Okay,
perfect.
Terminator. Before we go off topic too much, I still want to go on this. When I was doing infantry school, I was surprised how much trench digging still happens in modern combat, and obviously that happens when you have two similarly advanced military forces going toe to toe, which is why it's happening currently in Russia and Ukraine, or that war we're not allowed to talk about. Typically, over the last like 30 years of modern warfare, it's been like guerrilla versus more standardized military, or I forget what the word is, where it's like not evenly matched, like technologically or fighting style. So that style of warfare, asymmetric warfare, we got used to that kind of fighting. It's been a long time since we've had two forces that are like fairly evenly matched going toe to toe, which is how you end up in those trench situations where you just both dig in and like refuse to move. So
yeah.
Okay. Mark, do you want to read the comment?
Aiden says, Jordan fights drones, Christian fights pumas, and Mark fights the legal repercussions of eating Eric. Don't worry, the Lorehammer Law Lords has my back. We yeah.
Wait, someone in the Discord chat, I can't remember. Mark, you might have to remind me of his name. He said it's not pronounced pumas, it's pumas.
Oh jeez, yeah. I think that was Rambo, and yeah. I think he's wrong.
I've always said pumas. That's just me though.
Yeah.
I literally have never heard anyone say pumas. Like
I've heard puma. And really they're all just mountain lions. It's all the same animal.
Yeah, you're kill a puma, bobcat, my cat, whatever.
Anything that's a felinid.
Yeah.
All right. Back to this topic.
Yes, let's get back on track here.
The tanks of the Astra Militarum are led by the indomitable... Oh, sorry, I read that already. Man, now I'm lost. The majority of these warriors are stationed at Fort Drasus, a sprawling fortress that resembles a city unto itself. The fort is the heart of the Imperium's efforts on Kulth, with its landing fields never silent, constantly receiving resupplies and fresh troops for the front line. Newly raised regiments are given precious little time to acclimatize the cult's harsh and ashen atmosphere, which is thick with the scent of gunpowder and propellant. It is an environment that most grow accustomed to, but only if they survive long enough. It's funny that they're using gunpowder and propellant since they use las weapons, but I digress. Their artillery
Shells and stuff, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say, their artillery would use it. Once they march out through Fort Drasus's massive Aquila Gate, few ever return. Those that do are often broken and battered, the regiments so decimated they must retreat to regroup. The rest, however, make their journey back to the fort in body bags, their sacrifices fueling the never-ending war on Kulth, ever in service to the God Emperor of mankind, to be processed and turned into corpse starch.
Perfect. My kind of place all of a sudden.
Suddenly doesn't sound so bad.
Suddenly, I like this place.
So let's get into the orcs present on Kulth. So the forces of Genghis Grimtooth Gitslavers, wah, and that is like a mouthful, are an even more chaotic and unpredictable force than the Astra Militarum. So much so that the Imperial intelligence has long since abandoned any attempt to track their precise composition. Instead, the Imperium focuses on estimating the number of warbands and approximate strength of the orc boys within each. At present, the Gitslaver has committed at least 10 million orc boys to the war on Kulth, with countless more Gretchen, or Grots, thrown into the fray, often herded into battle alongside their brutish masters, or used as expendable shields. Yet numbers alone are of little use to the Imperium. What matters more is the type of war machines that the orcs bring to bear. Orc forces are a bizarre, ragtag collection of troops, charging forward on foot or riding an assortment of mechanically improbable vehicles, from speed bikes to massive, heavy battle wagons. Their artillery is no less eccentric, often scavenged from their enemies, but frequently cobbled together from scrap, making them unpredictable yet deadly. Some orc warbands field towering combat walkers of various configurations, while others equip their foremost warriors with suits of armor that rival the legendary Terminator armor worn by Space Marines. Though most orc warbands follow no discernible pattern, some choose to focus entirely on one form of warfare, driven not by strategy, but by the crude whims of the leader who has risen to power. I kind of like how anarchic that is.
Yeah.
Just randomness. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Orcs,
Yeah.
orcs
So
are
far,
fun.
we've had some cool orc conversion opportunities, whether they're riding dragons on that one planet, or now we got these kind of like you can make these mech warrior type guys, or just cobbled together battle tanks in a whole Mad Max type situation. Like very orky here. Lots of cool potential.
Absolutely.
Literally, when I said Mad Max, Grimaldus said Mad Max, but greenskins. So yeah, getting that vibe for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, where did I leave off? C or E?
A. I'll give a nice big gap for you.
Okay, yeah. Certain warbands prefer high-speed, lightly armored transports, charging directly into the enemy lines and leaping out to sow chaos and slaughter. Others rely on vast mobs of combat walkers, ranging from light killicans to the gargantuan stompas, creatures that are almost as massive as Imperial Scout Titans. It is a rare warband that invests in static defense. Instead, orcs tend to upgrade captured Imperial fortifications with whatever brutal modifications they deem necessary. These green-skinned marauders are often more inclined to take the offensive, launching ferocious assaults that turn the battlefield into a seething mass of alien bodies, stretching from horizon to horizon. The orcs' massive gargants, stomping forward with their trademark gait, deliver firepower capable of reducing entire fortresses to rubble, while their warriors bellow praises to their crude gods. To an Astra Militarum trooper, witnessing such a spectacle for the first time is enough to shatter the mind. The only thing more intimidating than the alien onslaught is the cold, unforgiving muzzle of a commissar's bolt pistol, held ready to execute any who falter or flee. Unlike the Imperium, whose forces are bound by a rigid and structured chain of command, the orcs govern through a simple principle of might makes right. Grimtooth Gitslaver, the warlord, holds ultimate control over his forces on Kulth and beyond, though he is most often found in his capital of Avitohol. Even so, he regularly appears at the front lines, reminding his boys who's in charge. When Grimtooth is absent, command passes to the strongest warlord, and currently, that warlord is psychopathic Zog the Zerker, who serves as Grimtooth's second. It remains to be seen whether Zog will overstep his bounds and incur Grimtooth's wrath, or become powerful enough to challenge his overlord for control. The situation is closely monitored by several imperial bodies, including the Ordo Xenos, as it holds the potential for significant shifts in the orc power structure.
Cool.
Yeah, I guess it's probably a cliche to say by now, but I just love how unpredictable the orcs are and how they always throw a wrench into everything.
Yeah. I was just thinking about doing like the RPG and, you know, you're playing as some people on this war zone or whatever. And like now knowing these two orc war bosses kind of exist, you could like do a mission where you're trying to help out the one technically, not really, but try to make him more powerful, just powerful enough that hopefully he rebels and then creates two major orc war parties that just then clash against each other. Because the whole Severan Dominate seems like that's their tactic, you know. They try to pit one foe against the other and try to, you know, save themselves some work.
Classic
Be
CIA
a cool
maneuver.
little, yeah. It'd be a fun little story arc to try to play through. Yeah. Yeah, also the might makes right. See, I said that earlier, you know, you don't need fancy ideologies when you just have a chain axe and a chopper.
True.
So now we'll jump to the Severan Dominant forces that are present on Kulth. The armies of Duke Severus XIII are far less varied than those of the Imperium or the Orcs, for the Dominant has fewer resources to call upon when it comes to raising its troops. The majority of its forces consist of infantry armed with whatever weapons the planetary defense forces of their homeworld possess. Some Dominant units bear a striking resemblance to the Astra Militarum, while others resemble a little more than a disorganized mob, poorly equipped and hastily thrown together. Despite their relative lack of resources compared to the Imperium, the Dominant still finds many of the same iconic Imperial war machines, such as the Lehman Russ battle tank and the Chimera armored personal carrier. However, while the Astra Militarum relies on long-range logistics to supply its armies, often making minimal use of locally produced vehicles, the Dominant makes extensive use of vehicles rarely seen outside the periphery. These include light tanks, ambulatory gun platforms, and a variety of crude yet remarkably resilient ground attack aircraft, making their forces an unpredictable mix of desperation and determination. Yeah, that's kind of nice, like not being necessarily tied to the Imperium and not necessarily tied to the Mechanicum, where you can start making some more random stuff, or you have some different marks that are non-standard across the Imperium. You can maybe customize a little bit more. Kind of a cool little thing.
Yeah, there was a cool tabletop game that was like World War II themed. It's discontinued. I forget what it's called. I think it's Dust Tactics. That have some really cool walking tanks. So you could build those like ambulatory tanks.
Mm-hmm. I feel like once again too, like I kind of said it a couple times, but like, man, that that Severan Dominate propaganda is strong. You know, this picture that I've always had of them in my mind from the limited knowledge I had, it's very different. You know, I just read the propaganda pamphlets and believed it. But you know, when you go to a planet, you're like, yeah, these guys are armed with pitchforks. That's what their planetary weapon of choice is. These guys might have some better stuff. Oh, those guys definitely looted those Imperial troops over there. They look like a Legion drop troops. Like they're just kind of doing whatever they can, whatever they have. Yeah. What the armies of the Dominate may lack in advanced technology and vehicle sophistication, they more than make up for in sheer numbers. Though their worlds are not particularly populous, they are located close to one another, and with short lines of communication, the Dominate is able to mobilize forces far more quickly than the distant Imperium, which is forced to ship its troops from far-off sectors. Under Severus XIII's leadership, the armies of the Dominate have also been empowered by unparalleled fervor. Severus has proven a master of manipulating the hearts and minds of his people, and Mark's heart and mind as well, ensuring that those who fight for Kulth do so with a zealous conviction rarely encountered by the Imperium. They truly believe that Kulth is a sacred world granted to them by the God Emperor himself, and that the High Lords of Terra have betrayed them by entrusting it to the weak hands of the Calexian Lord Sector Marius Hax. The devotion of Severus XIII is made evident in the sight of the Imperial Aquila being scrubbed from the uniforms and vehicles, replaced instead by the proud visage of Severus, his head crowned with a wreath of laurels. Despite the rejection of the High Lords, the defenders of Kulth still consider themselves loyal subjects of the Emperor, and many carry a wide array of religious icons and personal relics that demonstrate their faith. Of course, none know what dark pact Severus XIII may have struck in his relentless quest for power. Since the arrival of Wog Grimtooth on Kulth, the armies of the Dominate have seen both significant triumphs and devastating defeats. When the Orcs first invaded, the defenders were brutally outmatched, and within mere solo weeks, the initial drops, those who were not killed were first forced to retreat to the Sanguinary Palace. When the Imperium came to Kulth's aid, the Orcs were initially driven back in disarray, but the situation quickly took a turn when Severus declared his succession, turning those who had come to help into the next enemy. On 3 separate occasions, the armies of the Dominant have nearly expelled the Imperium from Kulth, but each time a new Orc counterattacking Kulth or a nearby star system has forced the defenders to redeploy in a desperate bid to avoid total collapse. Now the bones of Severus XIII's soldiers are scattered across every inch of Kulth's surface, yet so too are those of their enemies, whether Imperial, Orc, or any other foe daring to charge their God Emperor's claim to the given world. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like that they just they're still loyal to the Emperor, but they scrubbed all the Aquilas and stuff. They plastered this one guy's Severus's face on everything. But yeah, he still makes use of kind of every tactic he can with fight harder for me and for the Emperor. The Emperor has given you this planet. Remember back when this planet was founded, it was ours. And then the Imperium came in and they turned it into this crazy administratum world where there's just shelves of books as far as the eye can see. And yeah, it's just kind of this endless war zone now that they've created where they think it's this cool spot that we could take it back and we can make it great again. But I don't think it ever was great here. All just lies and propaganda.
Mark. Yeah, no, it's cool that they're still technically loyal to the Emperor, even though, you know, they're fighting against the Imperium. Because you can make that distinction where, yeah. Back in the Thunder Warrior episode we did a while ago, that was kind of my premise for if the Thunder Warriors came back, that they would see the current Imperium as like a failed copy of what the Emperor's wishes truly were. So in a way, they would be loyal to the Emperor's dream, but fight against the current version of what the Imperium has become. So you could see how that could manipulate people. Like it is kind of true that the Imperium is nothing like the way the Emperor initially made it. That all being said, Severus isn't doing that because he doesn't know what the Emperor's actual vision is. He's in it for himself, really. But he uses that as his tactic, right?
Yeah.
The High Lords are so far away, they don't care about you. You're just, another world to them. But
yeah. And then when they do get involved, they took our favorite planet and turned it into their world.
All right, that was a lot on that world. That was very in depth.
Yeah, I think that one's like their main world, their kind of capital or whatever, essentially. So
Yeah, or at least their main conflict zone.
yeah.
All right, Lucius.
Hold on, before you get into that, Grimaldus just has a comment about that. He says, "Why don't the Primarchs think the same way, though?"
Man, it's so funny. I've said this so many times on the podcast, so I didn't want to say it again. But Reboot Gilliman, when he is resurrected, has the best quote of all time. And since you mentioned it, Grimaldus, I'm pulling it up to read it.
You just have to have it on hand all the time.
Yeah, I really do.
I love this quote too.
All right, here we go. What more do you want from me? I gave everything I had to you, to them. Look at what they made of our dream. This bloated, rotting carcass of an empire is driven not by reason and hope, but by fear, hate, and ignorance. Better that we had all burned in the fires of Horus's ambition than to live to see this. So, yeah, the Primarchs do feel that way. This is not the Imperium. This is not what the Emperor had planned. This is what Chaos wanted.
Yeah. And also, to be clear, like, even though Gulliman feels that way in his core, he does end up kind of like giving into what the Imperium has become to try and change what he can from within. But there's like all this tension between him and the High Lords. And what Gulliman fears ultimately is humanity descending into another civil war while it's already on the ropes and so fragile that then it would just get curb stomped by any of the other myriad of threats that are currently besieging the Imperium, right? So Gulliman like calculates as he does, and he's like, better to kind of play along with this sham for humanity's survival, which is its own level of grimdark, right? Like he's kind of like hiding what he truly thinks just for the sake of survival, which is kind of the theme of the Imperium, right?
Yeah. Like, yeah, at this point, there really is no better option. So you just
Put your head
it.
down and get to work. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. On to the next planet, Lucius. Lucius is a star system consumed entirely by war, marking the line in the sand where Severus XIII has sworn the orcs shall not advance. In the Dominate's conflict against Waugrimtooth, the war world of Lucius stands as the most critical battleground, to which Severus has committed the overwhelming majority of his forces. It is likely that the Imperium's Spinward Front High Command remains unaware of Lucius's dire fate, as it lies on a remote branch of the Calixus Sagaris warp conduit, effectively beyond the reach of the Imperium's conventional military. For millennia, the native human population of Lucius existed as primitive tribal savages, but with the rise of the Severan Dominate, they have been forcibly thrust into the chaos of the 41st millennium. Iron Age barbarians, accustomed to waging war with little more than crude spears, are now drafted in vast numbers into the Dominate's ranks, armed with mass-produced autoguns and poorly crafted battle gear. Many of these conscripts suffer from combat psychosis due to the drastic shift in their existence, while others embrace the bloodshed with disturbing enthusiasm. Yeah, that's so wild. That imagine like you literally have never seen a spaceship before, and then you get like handed a lasgun and pushed into a modern battlefield. Like just mind-blowing.
But I can keep my spear, right? Yeah, you're going to need that too.
Yeah, you're going to run out of ammo eventually. Yeah.
But this is one of those situations where you would view these people as gods, right? Like, what's the quote? Like, technology so advanced,
indistinguishable from magic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, that would be that kind of situation. And then when we go back into ancient times, what do we know? Aliens. Right. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. Side note, but kind of apropos. There's an Amazon tribe that recently got introduced to the modern internet and has been consumed by pornography and completely debilitated their society.
Yeah, that happened in North Korea too when they got recently shipped over to Russia. A bunch of them are now just caught watching porn all day.
Just a bunch of guys jerking in front of a screen all day.
Just literally destroyed their like productivity of their society because it just.
Jeez.
That is like a sad commentary on our society. Anyways,
yeah,
like how much more productive could we be?
Yeah. We would have had flying cars, man. Nuclear cities.
But instead, we have OnlyFans. Fuck.
Lorehammer OnlyFans. Lorehammer calendar.
We'll get on it.
Oh, man.
All right. In the brutal battles of Lucius, it can be difficult to distinguish the combatants at a glance. The forces of the Dominate and the orcs of Grimtooth are alike in their savagery and thirst for blood, preferring to settle matters in the chaos of close quarters combat. Both sides are brutal and relentless, reveling in the carnage. But it is not only the native Lucians who fight on the world of the Severan Dominate. Soldiers from all corners of the Severus XIII's empire are transported to the continent-sized battle zones, some traveling for solar weeks, only to be mowed down moments after landing. Yeah, very, very grim. Saving Private Ryan when they drop the ramps and just like training your whole life just gone and didn't even get to fire off a shot. The Dominants armies lack the logistical infrastructure of the Departamento Minatorum, meaning supplies are erratic at best. Some months the troops go hungry, and others they find themselves without ammunition. Entire armored formations might charge into battle in grand assaults only to run out of fuel before the fight is decided.
Fuck.
Sounds like something someone should have checked before they took off. Among the more primitive of the Dominate's frontline troops, a savagery emerges that would be deemed unworthy of the Astra Militarum. Gruesome trophy-taking is the least of their transgressions, as whispers circulate about more sinister practices. It is said that some of the native Lucians, when their rations run low, turn to the flesh of their fallen enemies, particularly orcs. Whether this vile habit of cannibalism will have long-term consequences yet to be seen, but the potential horror it could bring when faced by Imperial forces remains an unsettling possibility.
Hey, this is like the first, kind of real example of like that I've come across of humans eating orcs and becoming vegetarians, essentially.
I was gonna say that. Technically, you're vegetarian.
Yeah. No, that's interesting that you can actually eat an orc and get sustenance out of it. I always assumed that you probably could. And, I maybe had the thought that maybe if you eat an orc, the spores get inside you and that could cause some harm to you. But maybe if they're cooking it over a little bit of flame, you kill those spores off, you eat the meat fine, It's maybe the concept.
Yeah.
What's venture a guess what an orc would taste like?
Broccoli. Yeah.
Yeah,
truffles.
Maybe.
Brussels, that's a good one.
No, truffles.
Oh, truffle.
People in the chat let us know.
Taco Bell, I really don't think they taste like Taco Bell. Taco Bell is fucking delicious.
Romaldus in the chat. Okay, I'm sorry.
Response way too quick with the Taco Bell. Jeez. This is such a cool planet, man. Like, once again, another crazy opportunity for such fun conversions of like these like almost feral worlder trophy heads on their belts and stuff. They're eating orcs. They have las guns and spears. Very fucking cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we move on to the next planet?
Mm-hmm.
It's Mesa. Is that how I should pronounce it?
What else, man?
Okay. Just as a little aside, my in-laws live in Mesa, Arizona, and I go there every year, so I'm just gonna pronounce it Mesa. But it's Mesa, Arizona is spelled M-E-S-A. So, in any case, So Mesa is a world in total ruin, once classified by the Administratum as a frontier world. Its population existed in a subsistence state, scattered across a number of isolated cities. When Grimtooth descended upon the planet, the Masons fought with unwavering courage to defend their world, but they were hopelessly outmatched by the overwhelming invasion. In just 6 months, Mesa fell. The surviving population was rounded up by the orcs and thrown into slave pens, held in the most brutal conditions imaginable. Although Imperial forces were too far away to intervene, a small infiltration mission was launched to observe the invasion. This team would be the first to witness a dramatic shift in the orcs' tactics. Instead of slaughtering the vanquished natives as was customary, the orcs gathered them up and forced them to work in sprawling ramshackle labor camps, manufacturing arms and equipment for Warlord Grimtooth's vast war machine. Pudagulag. This unexpected development marked a pivotal moment in the invasion, one so significant that the infiltrators immediately set off a perilous journey back into the Spinward Front, high command with the vital intelligence they had gathered. Although only a few of the infiltration teams survived to return, the information they carried was of such importance that the Imperial Navy swiftly assembled a makeshift task force of long-range cruisers and escort squadrons. Without hesitation, they set course for Mesa. Upon arrival, nearly 3 solar months after the planet's fall, they found a world irreversibly changed. The once quiet cities had been transformed into sprawling, disordered manufacturing hubs. In orbit, countless orcs vessels swarmed, loading massive quantities of material every day.
Cool. This seems like the one productive planet so far in the sector, and lo and behold, it's the orcs who are running it. Ain't that a trip? The only useful place in the whole fucking periphery. It's all those slave humans. Yo, I think I shared this on the last time. You guys hear how many people got killed in the line in Saudi Arabia? They're using slave labor over there, and there's 20,000 people that have died over there so far, and 100,000 have gone missing.
What's the line? I haven't heard of this.
Neon? Oh my god.
The line is like it's a utopia city. It's a future city or whatever that Saudi Arabia is building.
Yeah, I seen that. Oh, they're actually. I thought it was just like a proof of concept that they're actually doing the thing.
Well, they're trying.
Oh,
wow. Yeah,
it's not going very well, obviously.
Oh my goodness.
But fuck, you put some human slaves on something, you can really accomplish wonders, and this is what the orcs are up to on this planet by the seams of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think also when the World Cup was it in Qatar, they had tons of slaves building the soccer stadiums, and a bunch died there too. Yeah, and nobody talked about it. Just saying.
No, enjoy your soccer though.
Hey, it's called football. Okay, shall we continue? The task force's orders were unequivocal. With grim determination and prayer on his lips, the admiral commanding the fleet ordered a devastating orbital bombardment to raze the cities to the ground. In a single night, the orc slave camps were obliterated. Their manufacturing capacity wiped out.
Not rescued, obliterated. Fuck those humans.
They're denying them assets. You gotta.
Yeah.
And hundreds of thousands of enslaved Masons were killed in the firestorm, their souls entrusted to the emperor.
Heaven.
Right to heaven with them. To the emperor's side.
Indeed. Okay. Those who survived the scouting rose up against their alien captors and now wage a bitter, relentless struggle amidst the ruins of their once proud cities. The cities are now charred husks, the land around them cratered and lifeless. Yet still, the Masons fight on. Warlord Grimtooth, furious at the scouring, views the vast number of slaves he once held as a symbol of his strength, and he has vowed to recapture or destroy them all. Though Mesa lies far from the Imperium's front lines, the conflict continues to rage. With neither side showing signs of yielding, the battle for Mesa will likely continue until one side stands victorious or both are driven to extinction.
This could be another fun little RPG plot that you take your characters on adventure, just like a slave uprising in this planet before the scouring, of course, while they still were slaves on Mesa. Yeah, just like rebelling, you're plotting and scheming, trying to collect more resources for your uprising and stuff.
Yeah. Aiden in the chat says, bro, there's slaves who care about slaves.
Didn't know we had a Roman emperor in the chat.
I personally have a different thought on that, but whatever. You know, some people don't care about slaves, others want to eat them. Whatever.
That's not where I thought you were going with that, but knowing you now, that all makes sense.
It all makes sense.
He eats people.
Yeah, that's a cool spot for sure. I'm just getting more and more RPG ideas for sure. On the Discord, we are running RPGs, so if you feel like one of these is really speaking to you guys, maybe put together a group. I'll run some RPGs in this sector. But we'll carry on to the next world. Let's see what tantalizing bits of information we find on Ohmsworld. Ohmsworld is a planet inhospitable to human life, perfect for a role-playing game. Its dense and toxic atmosphere is rendering it utterly inimical to anyone who might wish to settle there. Few venture to the world, and even fewer choose to make their home. For their environment is a blighted one, marked with hideous conditions and volatile, unpredictable weather. The majority of Ohmsworld's residents are often descendants of colonists who are forced to endure life on the planet due to its unique mineral wealth. The planet's harshness is not without its rewards, however. Despite the forbidding nature of the world, its atmospheric contaminants make Ohmsworld a valuable asset to the Imperium. Though painstakingly atmospheric filtration processes, the inhabitants are able to extract rare chemicals and compounds that are crucial in the production of adamantium, a material of immense importance. This valuable resource is ultimately what ties the inhabitants to this cursed world, forcing to endure its dangers in exchange for the riches it provides. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like, this atmosphere is so like polluted and toxic that you're able to actually extract adamantium from it, or at least the chemicals to make it or whatever. Maybe some type of curing chemical or whatever you kind of extract from it to help cure the adamantium or whatever. We're talking space metal, so who the fuck knows?
Space science.
Yeah.
It's probably, very awful to breathe that stuff in, but I wouldn't know. It's not like I snort it for fun.
No. It's too expensive, man. It's
adamantium is way too expensive. Yeah. It'll coat your bones if you do it enough, so you can Wolverine on people. All right.
That's cool.
Let's get into the climate. Nearly all of Ohmsworld's human population reside within the countless hive spires that punctuate the planet's barren surface. Though each spire is far less populous than the typical imperial hive city, many of these fragile structures rival their larger counterparts in height and girth and veininess, towering above the planet's toxic expanse.
What?
You've never...
I demand. Sure.
You've never seen a tower being described as veiny. It's got lots of power cables going on. The shaft of the tower. These vast spires, however, are not the bustling centers of industry one might expect. Instead, they function primarily as massive air filtration systems, a network of delicate near microscopic tendrils, resembling minute feathers, stretches throughout the hive structures, filtering the planet's vile atmosphere. The air cycles constantly through these towers, and with it, the intricate filters work tirelessly to isolate the most precious ores from the toxic air. Each microscopic strand captures a minute flecks of rare minerals, far smaller than a grain of sand. These elements are then passed into the collection systems, where they are smelted into larger bars. Once refined, the ores are transported off-world to the Imperium's refineries and manufactoria.
Cool. So that's the process. Now we know how it's done. Yeah. We just learned a little bit of space metal science there.
Space metal. Thank you, teacher Mark and Christian.
We got
Yeah. go
Comment, I wonder if adamantium is an alloy and the stuff in the air is what is needed to add to the another metal to make it to turn into adamantium, like adding carbon to iron to make steel. I will check Google to see.
That is way above my pay grade. I do not remember anything about chemistry.
Yeah.
You
We
guys
all went to a very
Especially made up
janky private
chemistry.
school. Yeah. We didn't learn much of anything beyond religion,
All right.
philosophy.
While Mark looks up that, I will continue. As a byproduct of this filtration process, breathable air is funneled into the interiors of the spires, a life-saving effect. Without this, the inhabitants would be entirely reliant on rebreathers. The planet's oxygen is so scarce that filtration plugs or gas masks would not suffice for survival. Most citizens who leave the spires wear tanks of breathable air, as venturing into the open surface without the protection is far too dangerous. The air is so toxic that no known population of humans or mutants survive on the surface, aside from those living within the hive spires. Due to the extreme toxicity of the atmosphere, agents of the Adeptus Mechanicus have found no evidence of native life forms. They surmise that no organism relying on a carbon-oxygen life cycle could survive in the planet's environment. Local legends, however, whisper of creatures that might defy these expectations, beasts of whose biology is entirely alien to any known Terran form.
Interesting. Yeah. That's fun. Adamantium in Greek is an alloy, but in 40K it doesn't say if it is or not. But it definitely kind of seems like it is.
It's adamantium too is like, because it's made up, like so many other fictional universes, like Wolverine, like I said, has coded in adamantium too. So
yeah,
or is it adamantine? I think it's adamantium.
Apparently, it's a metallic polymer. Which once again, now what the fuck does polymer mean? Now we're on a different type of tangent here. Off to Google.
I think it's actually polymer.
Debatable. We could debate that all night if we had the time, but unfortunately, we have to learn about the history and culture next.
Okay. So, continuing on the history and culture. Excuse me. The early history of Ohmsworld colonization is shrouded in mystery. The tower filtration spires, a remarkable feat of engineering, represent some of the greatest technological achievements within the Severan Dominate, but their origins remain unknown. The design of the spires closely resembles Adeptus Mechanicus technology, yet there are no official records detailing their creation outside the carefully guarded archives of the machine cult. It is possible that Ohmsworld was settled before the Angevin Crusade, though this remains speculative. Recently, Astra Militarum forces have initiated a concerted effort to secure Ohmsworld. This is partly due to the planet's vital ore production, which the Imperium seeks to control, but also to prevent the Severan Dominate from claiming. Both the Loyalists and the Secessionists hold the hive spires in high regard, and neither side is willing to risk damaging them in battle. Thus far, most of the conflict has taken place in the planet's desolate open plains, where the toxic atmosphere clouds visibility and makes combat exceedingly perilous. There have been a few notable exceptions. However, when infiltrators successfully breach the security of a hive spire, allowing loyalist forces to engage in brutal, close-quarter combat, fighting their way through the spire's labyrinthian halls, room by room.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Another great little planet to just really call your own. Something worth fighting over, you know? But at least, like, unlike a lot of these other ones, this one actually does have a fun resource to fight over, the adamantium, and a fun process on how to get it. No deep mining operations for this planet. Just mine it right from the air. Up next, we got Orbinia. The feral world of Orbinia lies at the spinward edge of the Severan Dominate, marking the last bastion of the human settlement along the Kulexus Scarius warp conduit, before the route plunges into the vast uncharted expanse of the interior sector, wilderness space. Orbinia itself is a brutal and untamed world, dominated by violent storms and unpredictable weather fronts. Its native population exists in a feral, almost atavistic state, clinging to the survival amidst the planet's harsh and unforgiving conditions. Above this savage landscape orbits a massive defense platform, its plasma generator silent, and its capital-scale weapons standing still and watchful in the empty void. Though unverified, it is believed that the platform was once towed past the periphery centuries ago as part of a long-forgotten plan to protect the Kulexus sector from some now-extinct threat. Whether it was abandoned due to an overwhelming cost of returning it or simply forgotten, it has remained in orbit around Orbinia ever since. Recently, Severus has commanded the restoration of the station, though those few tech adepts still loyal to him have yet to make any significant progress. Well, so this is like some huge, massive cannon gun. What was it pointing at? That is fun. Maybe some hive fleets have definitely reached this sector before the original ones, and maybe they were shooting at them. There are some examples that they Tyranids infiltrated before the original kind of behemoth or whatever got frozen in on ice planets and got lost for thousands of years. But yeah, that's crazy to think that they just have some massive fuck off cannon that they are trying to fix now.
Fuzz in the chat says, not black, mainly makes small stuff like bottle openers, hairpins, tent stakes, a few small knives, some D6s. Am I totally off here?
The comment before that was...
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. Sorry, my bad.
And he loves the idea of plastic metal. So then, I said, a blacksmith, that's cool. What do you smith? And are you really black?
I'm trying to square this idea in my head. Plastic metal.
Plastic just means formable. So technically all metal is obviously not the way we mean plastic in the sense of made out of hydrocarbons, but is malleable and formable like plastic.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't think that's what he meant, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Orbinia has suffered numerous orc attacks over the years, yet it remains far from the Imperium's primary conflict zones, protected by the remoteness. However, some influential members of the Spinward Front High Command have speculated that an assault launched from the Dominate's Spinward flanks could decisively crush the successionists once and for all. It is likely that these planners are unaware of the Orbinia defense platform, and should it be fully restored to operational status before any Imperial assault, the attackers may find themselves confronting a formidable and unexpected defense at the very point they least anticipated. Another cool kind of plot arc, what kind of secrets lie on this planet, around this planet, maybe even in the data records of this gun. Maybe, you can actually hack the system and read the data records from centuries ago and figure out what were they firing this thing at? What were they so worried about? Another fun little plot point.
It's true. That's what kind of damage could this gun do? Do you guys have any speculation on that?
Could blow up.
I've heard of an... Yeah, I was going to say that too. Now, is it a Star Destroyer, a World Destroyer? Yeah.
A Death Star?
Interesting.
It's a Catan killer, Mark.
Yeah.
Destroy the food source.
Can you kill a Catan? Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. No, sometimes I wonder if it's better just to leave the mystery and let you speculate. Were they fighting some third threat that no one knows yet?
That is true, but I just like asking the questions. I like to what could that actually do?
Yeah. I like that they set it up that now somebody could role play on this planet and make it up for themselves, man. Make up whatever crazy thing you can come up with. Yeah.
Yep.
That's all we know about that planet.
All right, on to the next one. Stalinthia. The barren expanse of Stellentia hides an immense wealth beneath its desolate surface. This mining world stands as arguably the Severan Dominate's most precious asset, though it is incapable of sustaining its own population, unable to produce enough food to feed its people. Stellentia is a veritable treasure trove of metallic raw materials, providing nearly enough to satisfy the demands of the manufactoria still under secessionist control. As long as the Severan Dominate can continue to extract and transport the planet's vast mineral wealth to other star systems, they remain assured of at least a trickle of resources to fuel their war efforts. However, such immense wealth makes Stellentia a prime target for nearly every faction involved in the ongoing conflict on the Spinward Front, each eager to seize its riches for themselves.
Sorry. So we'll get into the climate of the planet. Stellentia is a world suffocated by a heavily polluted atmosphere, trapping heat to nearly unbearable levels. Centuries of aggressive strip mining have ravaged the planet's surface and tainted its very air. The air is thick with particles, reducing visibility to mere meters on even the clearest days. Conditions can become so extreme that surface navigation relies entirely on radar signals. No matter how powerful the headlights, they cannot cut through the choking, dense smog. This polluted air is not only suffocating, but also perilous to the planet's inhabitants. Mining is the lifeblood of Stellentia, and every citizen, from the moment they can wield a shovel to the day they can no longer stand, is pressed into the labor. Rather than digging deep underground, the planet's mines are open to the sky, a necessary design to avoid catastrophic collapses and allow the entire workforce to extract the most valuable ores. However, this open mining method, combined with limited machinery, stirs up vast amounts of dirt. The planet's fierce winds whip this particulate matter into the atmosphere, further choking the air and worsening the pollution. The planet's relative lack of surface water and nearly flat terrain contribute to its violent winds, which sweep across the barren landscape without obstruction. The gravitational pull of Stellentia's two small moons is also believed to amplify intensity of the winds, exacerbating the already unstable atmosphere. Though the rain,
just a little
go
science thought. The planet's relative lack of surface water and nearly flat terrain contribute to its violent winds. Does water help violent winds, or is it just flat, like the flat land, and that's why it can get so much wind? Or like, is there like more water pressure shifts? Because I'm just thinking, like, the Gulf of Florida, where you get warm fronts and then they create crazy fucking winds, and now you got 120 mile per hour winds and stuff.
Yeah,
Teach me.
Usually water temperature will affect like wind speed. That's why like warm waters can create stronger hurricanes.
Yeah, okay.
But the other thing too is that it's both. It's also a big flat open space. I live near a lake, and whenever you're near the lake, you just get blasted with like crazy strong winds. But like moving a few like 100 feet away from it, like the wind is not nearly as strong because there's no obstructions either. So it's kind of both.
Okay.
But like on the climate scale, it's definitely like things like water temperature affecting wind.
Okay, hold on. So Aiden in the comments says, "Oh, I actually got my first Warhammer book today. False Gods. Loved Graham's interview. He was so cool, and books seem to be the only fairly priced thing from GW." And by the way, oh yeah, if you're watching on video, there you go. Yeah,
there it is, right there.
We're reading that
False
right
Gods.
now. Well, I'm reading that. Going to be reading that soon.
I read that 16 years ago when it came out.
Yeah,
what?
Isn't that crazy?
I was trying to get the original, the OG trilogy, from Abnett. Sorry. I was trying to get the OG trilogy from Abnett. The first book is like $40, and I tried to order it, and they wouldn't even send it to me. They're like, oh, we don't have it. But every other one after that was like $10. It wasn't that big of a deal. But like, I don't know. If anyone has the original, because right now that's actually Christians.
I definitely messaged James. I
really?
gave him the whole Lorehammer library, and I had like a bunch, man. I pretty much had the whole collection of Horus Heresy stuff plus many more. So
A digital or physical copy?
physical.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
Yeah, when I moved to Panama, I said, there's no fucking way I'm bringing books down to Panama. I'm never reading shit again. Got rid of it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that Graham McNeil interview was pretty awesome. That was on our 100th episode. And yeah, just having the author of such well-known books and such a, you know, he created the Tau essentially, you know, such a key character in the 40K meta. Very cool. So go listen to episode 100. That was super cool. Hey, you know, I get messaged all the time like, hey, you should reach out to this author or this podcast and do this and that. The problem is I don't have any of their contact information. But if you guys like, the way I got that Graham McNeil interview was somebody was somehow already messaging him. And then he said, I listened to this podcast. They would love to have you on. And that's how he hooked that up. So if you're already messaging, like you already listened to Adeptus Ridiculous, send them a message. Say, I would love to do a crossover episode with them or just whatever. If you're already in contact, it's easier for me than to create a new message and set that kind of channel up. But we'd love to do more stuff like that. We just kind of lack the foot in the door, so to speak.
Absolutely. Okay. Though rain is rare, dust storms are constant and a vicious threat. The most severe storms can strip flesh from exposed bodies, a testament to the planet's unforgiving nature. Ironically, while Stellanthia is shrouded in perpetual twilight and rarely sees direct sunlight, the surface has become far warmer than ancient records suggest that it once was. This increase in heat is believed to be a result of the pollution, which darkens the atmosphere, allowing it to absorb far more solar radiation. The diffuse light and heat create a consistent temperature with little variation from day to night and almost no seasonal change. The perpetual cloud cover and smog make Stellanthia's atmosphere nearly impassable for atmospheric craft. The air is so fouled with debris that traditional engines cannot function, and most vessels attempting to enter the atmosphere crash as their systems become irreparably damaged. This makes transport slow and perilous, and military operations on the planet are slow to a crawl, hindered by the constant environmental dangers.
Cool. Another fantastic world to live. The history and culture of this place. The inhabitants of Stellanthia remain largely unaware of the immense value of their planet's mineral wealth holds, nor do they grasp how crucial the assets are to the Severan Dominate's war effort. In truth, most of the planet's population lives in squalor, struggling to survive amidst the environmental devastation. It was not always this way. Legends tell of a time when Stellanthia's atmosphere was far clearer, when the world was potentially capable of supporting agriculture. It is said that it was only after Imperial explorers uncovered the planet's vast reserves of precious ores that the ecological disaster truly began. In the early days of mining, the citizens of Stellanthia found brief economic freedom. They labored to extract valuable ores from the planet's crust, and this newfound wealth seemed to offer hope. But as more and more of the population turned to mining as a primary occupation, pollution steadily worsened, and the planet's arable land began to shrink. As the environment deteriorated, the world's imperial nobility began importing food and survival goods, trading them for precious ores. The miners, once independent, soon found themselves enslaved by their own desperation, forced into indentured servitude to continue digging for the ever more valuable resources beneath their feet. That sucks. They created this like vicious cycle where it's like, now in order to get more food, we have to mine more. That just makes everything worse. And now we can't. Yeah, vicious cycle. It's a different type of endless war that they're fighting, not one of bodies, but of resources.
Yeah, that can always like that's always like just the monkey wrench in all empires and all wars is just your resource bottlenecks. It's like it can completely screw up your whole plan, right? Even if you look like you are on the winning side or you're making progress, it's one resource bottleneck and you are screwed, basically.
Yeah. This situation was tailor-made for Duke Severus XIII with the population's increasing desperation. He saw an opportunity to ignite a revolutionary fire within them, and so the conditions were ripe for revolt, and Severus was quick to exploit this growing unrest for his own ends. Yeah. Cool.
All right, on to the next world, Thrax.
I think this is the last one too here. The last beautiful, pristine world in this fledgling little empire we've come to love called the Severan Dominate.
I wasn't counting. Do you know how many planets we've gone through? I just saw numbers.
No, I could count though.
All right. Thrax is a frontier world on the Calixis-Sikaris warp route and has suffered greatly. Once a tranquil world of sweeping plains, it is now scarred by the ravages of war and the encroachment of bizarre alien fungus forests. The planet, still tenuously held by Severus XIII, has been battered by the forces of Wagrimtooth, but the star system remains in his grip, at least for now. The world of Thrax and its moons are densely populated, though their technology has barely advanced beyond the Black Powder Age. This is due in part to the system's isolation from the rest of the Imperium, leaving it disconnected from the greater Imperial reach. It is likely that Thrax was settled by human colonists long before the age of the Imperium, during the age of technology, and never truly integrated into the Emperor's domains, remaining a largely forgotten world, even as the Great Crusade unfolded.
Purge in the comments says he actually shared with us a quote from General Eisenhower, just pushing forward the point that we previously made. And this quote is, "You will not find it difficult to prove that battles, campaigns, and even wars have been won or lost primarily because of logistics." True.
Yep. One of the reasons why the Nazis did so well is because they had those train lines going everywhere, and they just had everything dialed in so they could ship things everywhere they needed. So that and copious amounts of drugs, so even their people could just march for hours on end without stopping.
And actually, on that point, one of the reasons, sorry, the Nazis failed is because they invaded Russia in the winter, and that is just very, very difficult to do. So,
yeah, ran out of drugs up there.
There's a quote too from Ryan Macbeth, who I follow on YouTube. He's like a sergeant in the American military, or was retired now. He does a lot of like military based videos and stuff, and he also has a quote. He's like, the American military is really the world's greatest logistics company that sometimes dabbles in warfare, so or something like that. But, yeah.
True.
For centuries, the society of Thrax struggled to rise towards civilization, but the devastating conflict of the Spinward Front has sent it back a millennia in a single catastrophic blow. The war has inflicted a twofold suffering on the people of Thrax. On one side, the advance of Wagrimtooth's forces has drawn countless orc warbands to the planet, seeking slaves. Hundreds of thousands of Thraxians have been abducted and forced to toil in the foundries of the orc git-slavers. On the other side, Severus XIII has requisitioned vast numbers of Thraxians to bolster the forces, compelling hundreds of thousands more to fight for the Severan Dominate in the desperate defense. The Imperium has also launched a series of long-range strikes against Severus's bases on Thrax. However, due to the planet's distance from the Imperium's front lines, these attacks have been short-lived, high-intensity raids aimed at causing strategic disruption, but with little lasting effect. The largest and most recent strike occurred in 815 M41, when the Astra Militarum launched a full-scale planet strike against Thrax. 9 entire regiments were committed to an operation in the planet's southern hemisphere, intending to secure a lodgment for future orbital supply drops. 9 regiments.
Whew.
So again,
That's
though,
more
it
than
gets
8.
weird. Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to say. It gets weird. Like 9 regiments could be like 9 actual full complete regiments. or those like subunit of regiments, which is still a lot of guys. But
Yeah.
there's a difference, and one is a lot more.
Yeah, you could have a whole planet regiment, or you could have like you said, that sub.
Yeah.
All of Cadia could be there, or just one of the Cadian regiments.
Exactly. Yeah. They need a better naming convention. The landings were contested by a native force of roughly equal size, and while the Astra Militarum should have been able to prevail with time and firepower, their arrival coincided with a massive Orc slave raid. This forced the Guardsmen orbital support to withdraw in the face of much larger enemy fleet. Cut off from reinforcements, the Guardsmen fought on, facing an enemy from two fronts. The exact number of casualties is unknown, but it is believed that thousands of Imperial soldiers were captured and dragged off as slaves to Grimtooth foundries. A force of regimental size is thought to have broken out, disappearing into the planet's wastes where they continue to operate as guerrilla fighters. These survivors, hardened by battle, now strike at Severus' forces from the shadows, launching ruthless raids and living off the land, their presence an ongoing thorn in the side of the secessionist regime. That's cool. They've like kind of inverted the situation, so now you have like Imperial guerrillas fighting the more dominant Severus's forces.
Yeah, flip it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Something for everyone in this sector. Yeah, so that's the planets that we have here. Some of them were a whole system. Some had just a planet in them. All of them seemed miserable as fuck. But that's what we love about 40K. I think my favorite...
Mother's womb is beautiful.
Excuse me! Yeah, okay. What's everyone's favorite planet? Jordan just said the Mother's Womb. Do we remember what that one's called?
The Hoth planet.
Yeah.
The cold planet. I
Yeah.
can't remember the name of it.
The cold ice one with the nice, yeah.
I actually
gardens on
did
the
like
inside of
just
the
the
ecodomes.
whole. Yeah, I did like just the whole idea of like isolated biodomes where I don't know why I like it. It's cool.
Yeah.
We all know why, Jordan. It's your Oedipus complex. That's why. I gotta say, I like either Thrax or Kulth. They're both pretty cool. Thrax, I like that inversion of like your Imperial forces are fighting, as the guerrillas or like the underdogs on that planet. And I like the Kulth, like that is fundamentally 40K, just grinding warfare. Every patch of land is just, senseless but valuable at the same time.
Yeah.
The blood of countless soldiers on every square mile.
Every square inch. Yeah. I think mine was Orbinia, which had that orbital gun, because just one of those cool plot points. And then my other favorite one was Kuivale, which was the very first one with the crazy dragons on it and stuff.
Kashyyyk,
both of them kind of real. Yeah. yes. We got some calling guests here, and they have a favorite planet that they would like to share. We got Aiden. We pulled him up. What are your thoughts?
I reckon my favorite one's the one that was actually going well, being run by orcs. Just seemed pretty odd to me. But orcs.
Yeah, it was a glorious orc utopia until the Imperium came along and fucked it all up.
Exactly. Absolutely rude.
Yeah.
The dragon one was pretty cool, though. Would not enjoy being there, but pretty cool.
I agree. That would be like my second, probably, is Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever that name.
I don't know how many Wookiees would be left, though.
True. That dragon would eat all of those Wookiees.
Yeah.
And make them all look like Ewoks.
Down in Panama, man, the foliage is so different than up in Canada, where it's like, oh wow, evergreen trees and pine needles. But down here, man, the trees are massive and like everything's just growing on everything. It's so cool. I love all the green. So that's definitely my kind of place. Just a giant forest where you can climb around in the trees.
You got to see some of the massive gum trees in Australia.
Oh
Yeah, I bet.
Mark, have you ever been to like the American? You've been to Florida, right? I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like Arkansas and like some of Texas and Georgia. It's like jungle, man. I don't know if anyone in the chat is there, but I've been there and like it actually reminds me of like the tropics, and I've been to the tropics and tropical countries as well. And yeah, like there's even places in the South in the States where it's like that, where like you could not just walk through. It's too thick, you know?
Yeah, like the Everglades or whatever in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, just crazy swampy and crazy trees.
Crocodile. Alligators.
Yeah. Don't mix them up. You'll piss
the
somebody off.
The Australian would know crocodiles.
Ours are better.
Yeah.
Not as good as crocodiles.
Not as good. The Astrocrota either way will fuck up crotalids.
Wait.
Alligators.
Sorry, I have to interrupt. Okay, how do Australians pronounce pumas?
I think we say pumas, but that's because
no.
Another reason I'll keep them locked up on that fucking island.
we're not even real, mate. We're just a conspiracy. I'm a paid actor.
Fair.
So since we have you heard all the other Severan Dominate episodes that we've done here?
Yeah, I have.
How'd you feel about this whole kind of just general environment, you know?
It feels good if you keep doing like big topics. There's lots of content to do, and use a record. And what is it? You just say 3 times a week now, basically.
Whew, definitely 2. You know, but you throw in the odd bonus episode, and all of a sudden you get 3 episodes. So
well, then there you go.
Yeah, there you go. It's cool when you learn about new stuff, especially so much details like this. Because like I said, like I had this one picture painted up in my mind. I bought into that propaganda machine. But then the more you dig and learn into it, like it's just not exactly what I pictured. But it's awesome still.
In the comments, Purge says Eden is his favorite. It had Eden 4, right? 4th Eden, rather. It has the greatest strategic value. Personally, I'd position its fields and then offer the citizenship food to give up their fight.
Poison.
Damn.
Poison the fields. It depends what side you're on, I guess. Are you for or against Severus?
Yeah, poison the fields all you want. It doesn't affect my corpse starch rations, so I don't fucking care.
Just gives them a slightly spicier taste.
Yeah, exactly. Don't need those flavor packets anymore. Yeah, so we've gone on a long adventure together. We're almost done. I think we're just gonna summarize kind of what we took away from it. You're welcome to stay on the chat, Aiden, with us, and feel free to give us your thoughts as we kind of read through these closing kind of thoughts.
Sounds good.
Jordan, I'll let you read the first one there.
Yeah, so survival over idealism. So the Severan Dominate is driven by the harsh necessity of survival. Even though it was like originally founded as a rebellion against the Imperium, its citizens and leaders prioritize endurance and survival, even if it means embracing morally ambiguous actions. This highlights the importance of pragmatism over idealism in times of extreme adversity. Yeah, so this is like it is kind of one of those things where you encounter, even in real life, you see like a movement, be it political, like a revolutionary movement. It starts out like idealistic, but it has, by necessity, if it wants to survive, if it wants to continue, it has to go to like more pragmatism. And that does seem like what the Severan Dominate does. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with that.
Well, the citizens don't really do that. They just kind of get led along. They think they're still helping the Emperor. Meanwhile, they're getting fed off to Dark Elder.
Yeah.
Or
sent to another world just to die there in one of their endless fields.
Or orc slaves.
Or orc slaves. Yeah, like this survival, no matter the cost, is very strong here, where it's like they're fighting over planets that have no more value, but now they're just doing it to survive. The time of their upward rise has ended long ago, and now it's just that like plateau, if not decline, of them just trying to survive.
Yeah, it's also kind of like a microcosm of the Imperium at large too. Like it's very much the same situation of like the Imperium, acting pragmatically. They're like extreme pragmatists, and it shows how it can like invert itself, at least in the case of the Severan Dominate, where like you become, like Jordan said, like if you're an idealistic movement and then suddenly you become pragmatic, but you can go too far and even be like against the very ideals that your movement was founded on, which happens quite often in real life too. So
it's actually like shocking how often that happens. You know, like I'll just take a very obvious example, like China. Obviously,
China.
China. Like there's these legally defined zones in China called special economic zones, and they're like the most free market, anti-communist little areas of China. Like Hong Kong is one, but there's actually a few others in China, and it just shows you like how they will like completely abandon communist principles when it means making money in certain areas, but then in like the rural areas they'll still be very communist. But like it shows you like all countries will do this if it means survival of the state, because all states, all empires, like their survival is their number one value, is like to stay alive. If someone's coming snapping at your heels and is threatening your very survival, you'll do whatever it takes to stay alive, even if that means sacrificing your previously stated values.
Well, China's also outsourcing a lot of their farming to Australia here. A lot of our farms have been bought out. So then it's like, why do we need to make them better there? We just do it over here.
Have you learned to speak Mandarin yet? Or...
Not yet, but I better
Get on that,
soon,
buddy.
just in case.
don't worry, Canada's right behind you. We're no longer British colonies. We're Chinese colonies now.
Canada. That bleeds really nicely into the next point of sacrifice for the greater good. Many of the inhabitants of the Severan Dominate, from civilians to soldiers, are forced to make significant personal sacrifices for the benefit of the larger cause. This underscores the theme of collective sacrifice, where the needs of the many outweigh the desire of the few or the one. So yeah, you know, they lock down some people, or they just kind of, you have, like Jordan said, an empire has to survive, and they're going to do whatever they have to do, whether it's sacrificing a bunch of people to do it, if that's what it takes, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it like, I don't want to get into this whole debate. I'll wait for another episode to get into it, but just the ideals of collectivism and like, yeah, sacrificing the individual for the quote unquote needs of the many. But like I said, the Imperium does that too. But like I said, I'll save that rant for another episode.
Who's ranting then? Surely we get one.
I'm sure I have a rant brewing in me side. Yeah, I'll save it for the end though. Have you ever heard of Das Eufen? No, just kidding. Let's carry on.
All right. The cost of rebellion. The Dominate represents a rebellion against the Imperium, and while it started with a desire for autonomy, it has come to a steep cost. From the lives lost in battle to the toll of constant war, the cost of defying authority is never small, and rebellion often leads to unforeseen consequences.
Yeah, unlike the Canadian on Australia, we didn't rebel against the British or China. And now
we rebelled against the emus and lost, so we're not trying again.
You had your war.
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm learning Mandarin because I had to learn to speak emu.
You know, I do feel like a little bit of camaraderie with Australians because we are fellow cucks to the British Commonwealth to this day.
My nan's actually Canadian too, so I've got both sides of fucked.
There you go.
both sides.
Australians are just hot Canadians, and Canadians are just cold Australians.
Precisely.
But yeah, the cost of rebellion. I'm actually surprised at how you typically imagine if you rebel against the Imperium, it's like scorched earth. They'll like just nuke your planets and move on. So I'm actually surprised at how, and I don't want to use the word lenient the Imperium has been, but for lack of a better word, yeah, like how not as heavy the Imperium has come down on the Severan Dominate. And there's a lot of reasons for that we went over through the whole series, you know, like they're kind of in the prime location. They're kind of off the beaten path. There's other bigger problems surrounding them at the same time.
None
And
of the
then-
planets are worth shit, anyways.
And
Yeah.
they're also being misled by, I can't remember what's his name. He's just saying, oh, yeah, it's small. It's nothing to worry about. Let me deal
Various
with it.
acts.
Yeah,
Various
that's his name.
acts, yeah. Yeah. And then I was going to say corruption on the Imperium side that kind of like allows this quote unquote problem to continue. So like I said, I was just kind of surprised that the Imperium didn't just drop a sledgehammer on them. And like we mentioned this actually when we were talking about the Vostroyans, is like it's really hit and miss with how the Imperium deals with what they consider to be treachery. It can be anything from like exterminatus to we'll just take the firstborns of all your sons forever, right? And anything in between. So yeah, just
Be
really
creative with it when writing your own planet lore.
How is
It's
the Imperium
almost-
punishing you?
It's almost when they're kind of desperate at the moment, like they're fighting so many different things, but when they have the power to, they will just destroy you and be like, see, don't do that again. And then they hope that maintains when they're like not as strong.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So the corrupting nature of power. Severus the 13th's leadership shows how power, once gained, can corrupt. The desire to maintain control and extend influence leads to authoritarian decisions, exploitations, and harsh measures. Sorry. The dominant story warns of how power can erode ideals and lead to oppressive systems. And yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a story as old as time. Like, absolute power corrupts, and
The ring of power corrupts, Jordan.
yeah.
Shit.
I will say, like, okay, let's look at like the US president, right?
Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah, which one?
The-
Biden, Kamala, or the elect Trump?
I don't know, the Alzheimer's ones, the dementia patient one.
So Trump or Biden?
Both of them together. Like, you have the power over the world's reserve currency, the most powerful military in the world, the largest economy in the world. Like, that is like, I don't know how to handle that. I couldn't handle that. I'm just
Neither
saying,
could Trump.
like, I could not be the president of the United States, much less the God Emperor of the Imperium. But whatever the
Yeah.
case may be, right? Like, like, this is absolutely true. I think like human beings are incapable. Like, that is too much power for humans to actually wield, for any single human being to wield.
Yeah.
It's just too
Not
much
to
data
concern.
to override our brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we will welcome in an overlord AI. Just give it 2 more years.
ChatGPT, my overlord.
I can't
Yeah.
wait till AI can just like do this whole episode for us, and then
Yeah.
It
All
will-
in is just
We're
all the
tired,
chatbots
boys.
talking to themselves.
yeah,
Oh God.
it will copy our cadence, how we talk. You know, like it'll be awesome.
The only way you will tell that it's not me is it will actually read the words correctly. You'll be like, there's no way that guy fucking knows what that word means. It's the only difference. The next thing we've learned from this little section is unity in the face of division. Desperate, its fractured and desperate nature, or despite its fractured and desperate nature, the Severan Dominate has managed to maintain unity among its people. In a time of war, factions must sometimes set aside their differences for the sake of survival. This teaches the importance of solidarity and finding common ground during times of crisis. Yeah. When orcs
Or
come
how-
knocking, you gotta just band together.
Or how a crisis can be a good opportunity to exploit vulnerable
Let me give
people.
you a good quote since we've gotten some from like President Eisenhower. This one will be from Hillary Clinton. And
The deep and profound Hillary Clinton.
yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste.
No, that
Perfect.
wasn't it. I'm 100% sure that was Rahm Emanuel Barack Obama's chief of staff. He was like the one who coined that. I could be wrong, but someone fact check me on that.
Leave it to a woman to steal a quote from someone else, eh? Fuck. Good for nothing. Yo, I had the funniest conversation with somebody like, why don't you have more women on the podcast? Like, my wife was wondering why we don't have more women on. I'm like, does your wife want to come on? And then he's like,
yeah,
no. I'm like, well, that's why. Like,
Exactly.
Half the reason I do the call in is because my girlfriend's sick of me talking about Warhammer.
exactly.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I do wonder, like, when you're facing like an existential crisis, like the Severan Dominant probably is, because they can never get their act together, and the whole charade is built on a house of cards. Like, would that actually unify people, like when you're really facing a serious problem, or do you think it would actually just fall apart?
That depends. Are they smart, or are they like me and then just use the distraction of buying minis and painting to deal with that?
Hey, it's therapy, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's jump to the next point that we've learned. We've learned so much. We're really growing as people together, you know?
I feel smarter already.
Apparently, Purge says Winston Churchill first coined the phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah, I'm Googling it too, and that's what I'm saying. Also, it's treated in so
Okay.
I don't know who to believe. The internet is full of lies nowadays with quotes.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
don't know. Winston
it's like
Churchill has the best
Abraham.
phrases.
It's like Abraham Lincoln said, "Never trust anything that is said on the internet."
Yeah.
I love that quote.
What was Eric's stat? 70% of stats are made up at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a classic one.
All right, our next lesson learned is the weight of leadership. Severus XIII bears the enormous responsibility of leadership, making tough, often morally questionable decisions. His choices show the heavy burden of command and the isolation leaders can feel, constantly weighed down by the consequences of their actions. This is true overall, but Severus also, I don't think, is a hero. I think fundamentally he's in it for himself. He's not like a good guy. He uses all that as a front, but fundamentally,
I'll push back just a bit. Like, yes, he's in it for himself, but also he's in it for his family name. Like, he's a legacy of, you know, potentially being the 13th dude, and his family, his original founder, came into this sector and made it wealthy and prosperous. And like, you know, maybe there is some of that legacy attached for it where, yeah, he's not in it for the people. I 100% agree. But like, maybe he is in it for his family name and for the legacy of that. Now, is that kind of...
Yeah, no, that's fair, actually.
Isn't that just as selfish?
Yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't redeem him totally, but it's marginally less selfish if it's you and your family above everyone else.
But also, do you think that like people can? We go back to the thing that power corrupts. Like, you start out idealistic with principles, but then like once you start getting power and compromising, then you just start becoming a worse and worse person, right?
So there's elements
and
of
then
that.
before you know it, you're selling your population to the Dark Eldar.
Yeah. So what I think he is he did have, again, selfish intentions to start with. I think he was a greasy dude from the beginning, but I also think there's an element of kind of like Breaking Bad, where like his decisions and his actions kind of like dug him a deeper hole, so then he has to dig deeper to try and get out. Like, he ends up in this negative feedback loop where like maybe he doesn't mean to do all the things he's doing just to hang in there, but now that he's in so deep and over his head, he just keeps getting worse, right?
Sure.
Which speaks to all that. But
Yeah.
I think fundamentally, I don't think he was nobly intentioned.
Fair enough.
No, he was always in it for himself.
Yeah.
I won't lie, it seems that way.
Yeah.
But
And like I said,
he started the rebellion by telling them, "Oh, the Empire is actually not giving you any food. Like, sorry,
he
and they're
withheld
sending
the
you out."
resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Mark said, like, yeah, maybe not just himself, but also his family. But again, that's only marginally better.
Yeah, we knew about his ancestors, but we don't know if he had any kids. So it's like we don't know if he was passing this shit down.
Yeah, he's passing it on to me.
No, you said in the episode he was going back to like not caring. He just needs it to be done while he's still in power.
Cool.
Once he gets sniped, he doesn't give a damn. What's it affect him?
Yeah.
Okay, so just like another point on the willingness to adapt, the Severan Dominate's adaptability in response to threats, both internal and external, reveals the importance of flexibility in the face of changing circumstances. Leaders and groups that refuse to adapt are often doomed for failure, while those who can adjust survive and grow. But this kind of goes back to the point, like, do you sacrifice your principles for pragmatism to survive, or do you like stick to your principles even if it means certain death? But like, yeah, those who adapt survive. That is sort of like the rule of the law of the jungle.
Since we're throwing out quotes, Darwin, survival of the fittest, it's the way of the world.
Yep.
The role of propaganda in war. The Severan Dominate's ability to rally support and maintain control over its people often relies on propaganda, exaggerating victories and demonizing enemies. This serves as a reminder of how perception can be manipulated to maintain morale and control. Fake news! Yeah. Pretty neat way to live. I think I'm gonna try to increase my propaganda game with the Lorehammer Patreon. Yeah, we don't have any money. You gotta donate money to the Patreon so Jordan can eat, and then I'm gonna shuffle those funds around here, there, and really, it's just gonna become this crazy tax evasion scheme.
My wife and 3 children are literally almost out on the Canadian cold winter. So like, if you don't join the Patreon today,
it's desperate.
You are held personally responsible for that.
I'm classified as a dependent now too, so they got to look after me as well.
My 4 children, excuse me.
Dad?
Daddy Jordan? Yeah, clearly propaganda was his like main tool. Like I said, I bought into it, man. He got me even, and I'm the lore master, and he tricked me, that son of a bitch.
So I won't lie, I have a lot to say about propaganda and war. There's a famous quote, like, the first casualty of war is the truth, right? Like, and Christian and I have had many debates over this about like the certain facts in certain wars that are often distributed among the population. Like, how true are they? How reliable are they? I do think like propaganda is, whenever there's a war, like, we are pushed with endless propaganda, and you don't even realize it. It's even in like corporate commercials and stuff like that. Like, it is unbelievably ubiquitous and hard to avoid. But I do think like the role of propaganda in the 40K universe and everywhere around us in the context of war is always extremely important to the empire, the state, or what have you. So
like, even the like on a grander scheme of just 40K and propaganda, they're saying the emperor is a god, and they've built this whole religion on this, and that gives everyone hope and it does the will to push forward and all that. And like, is he a god? Hard to say, but they're definitely saying he is.
Grimaldus says in the chat, Jordan's Book of Tyranny, chapter 2. Oh, my friend, I have many chapters. Just wait till my book is published.
Yeah, I was going to say the best propaganda is propaganda that you don't know you're getting fed. That means it's working, right? Like, if you can detect the propaganda, it's probably not very good.
And I will also add to that as well, is like really good propaganda, like effective propaganda, is not propaganda that is like just complete nonsense and lies. Like, the Soviet Union tried to do this, where they would just do things that the vast majority of the populace just knew was nonsense, and like that led to the fall of their state. But real effective propaganda is like where you mix in a lot of truth, where like the claims that the state or the propagandist is making is conceivably true and not that far off from what you could see as being a plausible scenario, right? Like that is how you do effective propaganda. You don't do effective propaganda by just doing bold-faced lies. You have to do like it has to be mixed in with some sort of truth, right? Like you can't have an effective empire without a propaganda machine that also has, like the Severan Dominant. They're like trying to destabilize the empire. They are. It's absolutely true. That's what they're trying to do, right? Like, so anyways, just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know who this quote is from, but yeah, you have to marry a truth to a lie is the best propaganda. I will also counter all of that by saying that not all propaganda is false either. Some propaganda is true.
No, that's
exactly no. Like is just factually true, and like,
no, they will take fact, but they will.
No. I'm not talking about twisting facts or marrying lies to truth. I'm saying it's just straight up the truth,
Christian,
to achieve an objective. We can't.
The first casualty of war is one of these two, I think. When they get into the propaganda war,
they will omit other truthful facts that will add context to a certain statement, right? Like they will use the truth. They won't even lie. They won't even twist the fact or the statement that they're talking about, but they will omit other statements or facts that are pertinent to the situation that could maybe change your perception.
That has never happened in the history of the world, Jordan. Stop lying.
Okay, let's move on.
I also want to point out another comment by Purge, sort of kind of backtracking a little bit here, is that it's like Kim Jong-un family history. When we were talking about Severan the 13th being in it, not just for himself, but for his family line. Exactly. You wouldn't say Kim Jong-un is a particularly like selfless or honorable leader, unless he's going to invade Canada imminently, in which case I retract my statement. But exactly, like, if he's just as cruel and evil as any other dictator. So, is he really a good guy? I don't think so.
Better the dictator, Justin Trudeau.
That's why you stick with the Imperium.
Mark, do you even know the name? Does Panama have a president or a prime minister?
No, like I live out in the boonies, and like as like I don't want to say I'm an immigrant. Like I don't want to get involved in their politics. This is not my country. I'm a guest.
Pretty sure it has a warlord.
That would be
the one cool thing about Panama's history is Panama had like a dictator like 100 years ago, and the people rose up. Like Latin America has a huge dictator problem, but Panama rose up and cast off their dictator like 100 years ago, and since then they've actually kind of been very democratic and stuff. And like
that is absolutely not true. You've been propagandized, Mark. Manuel Noriega was not that long ago. He was not hundreds of years ago.
I didn't say hundreds, but like closer to 100. Like it wasn't. It was a longer
60, but.
Sure, son of a bitch. Whatever, man. Whatever. All I'm saying, it wasn't really my lifetime, so it wasn't even 2 of my lifetimes ago. But all I'm saying is, no, it's not my place to be involved in Panama politics. I'm just a guest here. If only other immigrants took this kind of fucking approach.
I was going to say, South America has more of a CIA problem than a dictator problem.
You ain't wrong there, friend.
Yeah. Next point, I guess.
I think did you do this one already, Christian?
Oh no, sorry. Yeah. Resilience in the face of hopelessness. Life in the Severan Dominate is grim and filled with suffering, yet the people continuing to fight. This embodies the theme of resilience, showing that even in the most hopeless of circumstances, there is still the will to survive and resist. Yeah. It's an interesting like philosophical debate. I don't want to open up another can of worms here, but like, what people would do to survive and to what extremes people would go to, and like even like backtrack on morality. There's lots of cases about like, cannibalism to survive, or like killing an innocent person for your survival. I don't want to delve too much into it, but it is definitely an interesting topic of how far people would go to survive, and like, is that necessarily an honorable, like even animals will fight tooth and nail to survive. That doesn't necessarily elevate you as a human. It's something that all living creatures do instinctually. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Indeed. Excuse me. So on the legacy of the past, the Severan Dominate's origins and the scars of its rebellions against the Imperium continue to shape its identity. This reflects how past decisions, whether personal or societal, can continue to influence the present and future. The history of a people or a nation plays a powerful role in shaping their path forward.
Yeah, this kind of just reminds me of that one planet that like they had the open mines and like, yeah, they were wealthy for a second, and then the more they mined, the more polluted the planet got, and then it just spiraled out of control, and now they're in this death spiral that they can't ever escape essentially.
Yeah. And it's also true, just like there's sort of like there's this term like a load-bearing myth. And now, not to get too technical here, but myths don't always mean like false or not true, but like something that your nation is founded upon. Like a lot of Western countries are founded upon World War II and the war against the Nazis. And Russia also, who is sort of like against America right now, is also founded on that myth. Like, and again, myth doesn't necessarily mean not true. It just means like a narrative or story that gives our culture some sort of meaning. You know what I mean? So I think like the legacy of the past is very important in how we understand ourselves. And in the 40K universe, and even in the Severan Dominate, like you're looking at like a David and Goliath situation where these people rose up and actually threatened the Imperium to some extent and made the Imperium upset at the very least. It's hard. We have debated in past episodes like how much was the Imperium actually involved in this, but we know to an extent that they were concerned about the Severan Dominate's role and how much they were the influence that Severus had over the populace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, like there's the fact driving the myth, but wouldn't the myth just be like how the people spread it around themselves? Basically, it's just another form of communicating.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you need this. Like most countries need, or even states, imperiums need like a load-bearing myth that like helps them to have a story that unifies them under like a banner so that they can resist whatever evil they're facing or whatever enemy they might be facing. Like you need that load-bearing myth. Otherwise, if you don't have it, your society just falls apart and fractures into like multiple factions that are warring against each other, right? If you don't have a load-bearing myth, then you cannot fight the enemy that's in front of you.
Yeah, like one of the main differences between Canada and America, even though they're so similar in so many ways, is like, America's load-bearing myth is their rebellion against Britain. And that bought their independence and stuff, where Canada and, Australia, we didn't have that same kind of thing. We don't have that kind of starting mythos that we can all kind of look to and come from and be drawn from. We rely on somebody else's mythos essentially, or Native American mythos or Britain's mythos, but we don't have our own really.
Yeah, we don't have, like in Canada and Australia, we don't have a Revolutionary War that we have this load-bearing myth on. I do think we have the load-bearing myth of World War II. And again, I'm not saying it's true or false. We can all make our own opinions on that. But the load-bearing myth is just important for the culture, to unify the culture, so that we have like a story that we all agree upon and that we can all like say, you know, I don't know, we kind of, it's hard to find the words, but we kind of have this like unified story where we all get a sort of catharsis from, like, we defeated the Nazis, or we defeated the Germans, right? We defeated this great
British Empire.
evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Grimaldus in the chat said everyone from Canada. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think, yeah, it is even in the 40K universe, like if you want to have like an empire that is strong and unified against a foe, you have to have these load-bearing myths, right? Like,
you need your own great crusade. We need a great crusade, Canada.
Well, yeah, the load-bearing myth, that's just the big thing they always speak about in every speech they always do. The thing that's always brought up to get them all riled up and then go get themselves killed by whoever they're facing.
Yeah. Yep. Fun. Wow. Well, we made it through. We've learned almost all there is to know about the Severan Dominate. Do you have any closing thoughts, Aiden, before we boot you out?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, always a pleasure, man. We'll see you on the next one. Let's all now go watch the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight. But no spoilers in the chat yet.
My roommate's been watching it next to me, so I've been fine.
You bastard. That's it. I'm booting you. All right. We're at the end. We'll just do some quick shout outs. It's been a long episode. Go check out the Lorehammer Listen to Lore podcast. Been a lot of fun just recording people's lore. If you want to submit lore to that, do lorehammerpodcast@gmail.com. I fit them in whenever I can. Do we need to shout out Star Lords, or have we mentioned that enough in this episode?
Yeah, absolutely. No. Star Wars is our other podcast that me and Jordan run, all about Star Wars. Come check us out over there if you like Jordan's long-winded rants about tyranny.
We do.
I will tell you how to be a tyrant.
Do his ways.
I will say, like, Palpatine doesn't even hold a candle to the God Emperor of mankind. He was not able to develop a myth that
founding. Oh my gosh, he's on the rant again. Set him off again.
Oh, you set him off. Put him back in the basement. Lock him up. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to support the show on Patreon for $2.50 an hour. You can get ad-free content. If you want to join the live streams and be calling guests and all that kind of stuff, it's $5 a month. So very cost effective, very cheap. And we have a lot of fun just hanging out and chatting with all these new and different people and stuff. So for new Patreon members since the last episode, we have Ben, Chris the Power Gamer, and Andrew. Thank you so much. Every dollar helps feed Jordan's 4 children. So we really appreciate that.
Also, good luck joining the Imperial Tithe in whatever battlefield you find yourselves on in the near future.
Grimaldus says if Tyson wins, Lorehammer gets $100. So that's on YouTube. That's So let's make that happen, Tyson. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Lorehammer. Adios.